Chapter 358 Cha Jung-woo 4. Team. Yahiko, Thursdays 3/10. You have connected to the obelisk. Your personal information is being confirmed. Please wait a moment. What is this? My vision blurred and a new world appeared. I stood there blankly, not knowing where I was. I had just been in the white hallway of the hospital, but this was a closed room with black walls all around. The light coming from the stone on the ceiling was the only way to see. There was a weird hologram floating around me. The obelisk. Personal information. I didn't understand any of it. It all seemed to come straight out a movie. Was my illness so bad that I was seeing illusions now? Is anyone there? Hello, hello. Low. My voice echoed on the walls. I got a grip on myself then. There were two possible scenarios. I was crazy, or this is real. Our poor schizo brother would have paced around, asking where this was, but I calmed myself down and tried to look at the situation with reason. The more realistic judgment out of the two was the former. The rare disease I had was hard to diagnose, so it wasn't weird for illusions to suddenly be its symptoms. It wouldn't be strange for my brain to be influenced by the shock that my mother suddenly fainted. So if this really was an illusion, there was nothing I could do until someone from outside treated me. But if this was reality, it was totally nonsensical. But if some godly being granted my wish like in a movie or a novel, then what now? Let's face it head on first. I decided to accept this realistic illusion. If it really was an illusion, I had to find a way to get used to it, and if it was real, I needed to get back to my mother and brother. Just then, all player information has been confirmed. Player, Cha Jung-woo. Would you like to continue? The letters in the hologram changed and new information was shown. It looked like a message one would see in a game. I nodded. You have accepted. From now, your awakening as a player is being prepared. Unlike other players, you have entered through an invitation of the future. There will be a short guided tour to close the gap in skills. First, please choose one of the weapons below for smooth progress. List. 1. Sword type, long sword, short sword, saber. 2. Dagger type. 3. Spear type. 4. Batting type. 5. Throwing type. 6. Others. There were 6 categories in the list. Each category had tens of weapons. They were all things one could find in a game. I pressed the one that was at the very top. Long sword. The blade is sharp and straight. The most basic weapon. The overall length is 90 centimeters, the width 3 centimeters, and the weight 2 kilograms. Would you like to select the long sword? Warning. A weapon cannot be returned once selected, and you cannot choose other weapons. Would you like to continue? I quickly lifted my hand from the hologram. The message about selecting the long sword disappeared. I have to choose wisely. If this was reality, I had to be prepared. I didn't know what would come after. I was dropped in a closed room after clicking yes to the message. It wasn't normal. I wasn't sure, but the weapon I chose now was probably directly related to my survival. They were all weapons that seemed to be from the Middle Ages, but there was something that stood out. Crystal ball. An artifact that helps the flow of magic. It has a white light. Crystal ball. Magic. Magic existed. But thinking about it, it wasn't weird at all. Why wouldn't it exist when people could be summoned by a message? Of course, that was all assuming this was real. How much time had passed? You have been checking the list for longer than any other invited players have. Your careful attitude can help in climbing the tower. It is recorded in your accomplishments. You have gained the trait, Thinker. A god is looking at you with interest. Trait, God. The message had information I couldn't understand again. Thinking that I should ask someone if I met them, I came to my decision. You have chosen the scutum. Scutum. It was an item that was known as the tower shield in games. The scutum was 2 meters long, 80 centimeters wide, and weighed 15 kilograms. Multiple layers of wood supported the center and the top and bottom of the surface were fixed with gold. The shield was so perfectly specialized for defense that history recorded it as the walking turtle shell. There was no way that I would suddenly be able to grow just because I got a weapon when I had absolutely no talent for sports back in Korea. Since I didn't know what kind of danger would be outside, I had to focus on protecting myself. I thought of getting a bigger shield, but it would be useless if it was too heavy, so I went with this. Light flashed and the scutum that suddenly appeared in front of me had a fancy crest on it. There was a cross in the center with wings spread to its sides. I didn't know what kind of crest it was, but the damages on its surface showed that it had been with someone through trials. There was a belt on the inside of the scutum so I could grasp it firmly. When I fixed it to my left arm, I covered my body with the scutum as much as possible and slowly began to move. That moment, the tightly closed wall opened with a creaking sound. There was a long path beyond it. The light there was brighter than where I was, but I was careful in my movements. Ohio. Ohio, you're so careful that you're a scaredy cat. A strange laughter rang in the hallway. Footsteps became louder as something approached my direction. I peeked through the corner of the scutum to check who it was. My heart thumped when I saw it. What is that? He was less than 150 centimeters tall with bumpy skin and lips that stretched to his ears. Sharp canines. The word monster described him perfectly. But the neat tuxedo and monocle looked well on him, so it was strange. Still, since you came here on an invitation, it means that you were acknowledged by the tower. You don't have to be that careful. The monster curved his lips, fixing his monocle. He probably thought he was smiling, but it was too gruesome for me. Was this really an illusion? An invitation? What's that? The only life form I met in this strange place was that monster. First, I needed to find out where I was. Oh dear, isn't the invitation useless if you don't know what it is? That's why I'm asking you. Did you get anything when you were connected to here? Just then, I thought about my phone. The ad message that said I could make any wish if I reached the top of the obelisk. Is it this? I showed my phone to him. The monster smiled with satisfaction and nodded. Seems like you're from a developed world. That is right. The invitation of the future has been confirmed. You have succeeded in meeting the guardian Yavilk. A special benefit is being provided. Yavilk, was it that monster's name? The benefit that'll be provided to player Cha Jung-woo is Ohio. How interesting. Dreaming of a dream. It's pretty rare, but it's yours now. Benefit. Dreaming of a dream. When the player wishes, they will be able to log in and out of the obelisk freely. There is a limit of 2 times. If invited by invitation of the future, the benefit can be exchanged with a new one for a price. What was this now? I didn't know anything at all. It seems like you're curious about a lot of things. It's the duty of a guardian to lead confused players on the right path. If you're curious about anything, feel free to ask. I'll explain everything that I have the authority to. Ohio. Yavilki's summary was very simple. This was a tower. A point where multiple worlds and universes met. Tens of thousands of beings visited it every day, hoping to climb it. Tower. What's in there? Gods. Gods. Yes, gods. At the end, there's the path to become a god. What kind of nonsense are you? Gods. There was no way they existed. My family wouldn't be in the state we were if they did. Ohio. It's up to you to believe me or not. In fact, supernaturals called gods and demons are just imagined beings. Ah, there are a few who are glaring at me sharply now that I've said that. They really have nothing to do. Yavilk muttered to himself looking at the air in front of him, like he could see someone. He was crazy. I wondered if I could really trust that monster. Anyways, if it's hard to believe me, let's see. Yes, you can accept it like this. There is a wish at the end. What? The wish to fulfill anything. Wasn't it written like that on the invitation? I checked my phone again. You can make a wish if you reach the end of the obelisk. The word that called me in here. Wish. Anything. Yavilk nodded with a smile. Nothing's impossible. It's a strange place with beings that call themselves gods and demons. Impossible doesn't exist. If you still don't believe me, how about seeing for yourself? Thump. Seeing it for myself. Yes, that wasn't bad either. What should I do now? Reach the end after going through this path. Yavilk moved to the side and pointed at the hallway behind him. Lights turned off, and darkness came. It was scary and heavy, like a monster was opening its mouth with open. Normally, I would have stepped back in fear, but I just clenched my teeth. If a wish really was granted after reaching the end, I might have been able to see my sick mother laugh again. I also thought about what Hung would do in this situation. What would he do if he had this chance? It was obvious. He wouldn't look back and face it head on. Like that, I took my first step into the darkness, completely dependent on the large shield. And that day, I died. Beep, beep, beep. I opened my eyes at the noisy alarm sounds. I could see a neat desk and books stained with spit. There was a notebook with a pen lying next to it. I guess I fell asleep while I had been studying all night. My head hurt like someone was poking at it. My mind was foggy, like I had dreamt something weird. What did I dream of? I only remembered arrows pouring down at me. My hair stood on edge on the fear I could still fear, but it quickly vanished. I think I made some strange friends too. Like a giant, who was 3 meters tall, and a pretty girl who called herself a witch. I think I dreamed the same thing multiple times, but I didn't remember. What did I dream of? Chapter 359 Cha Jung-woo 5. Team. HH, Yahiko, Thursdays. The dreams were repeating themselves without my knowledge. My friend, your face is so blank. You look stupid. I jumped to attention at the face that suddenly popped up. What the heck? Hey, don't surprise me like that. Your face is funny. Hey, I could say the same. No, you can't. I was about to refute what he said when I stepped back in hesitation. This guy was naively nice to me, but his body was hard to approach. He was easily 3 meters tall with muscles that could crush Yvilk in one hit. Moreover, his scary face added to his unapproachable aura. Valdebek, he called himself a descendant of the extinct giants. He was a half-giant or something. He joked that his giant genes were so faint that he was neither a human nor a giant anymore. People would scoff if they heard the joke, saying that it wasn't even funny, but I had stayed in this world, the tower, for a short while, and I knew how unbelievable this place was. I knew he was joking, but he was actually telling the truth. It was an extreme coincidence that I met Valdebek. The task of Section A was to clear the path of arrows. For me, who spent my time pent up in my room studying, it was an intense place. Half of me still thought that this world was an illusion, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling fearful because all my senses felt vivid. And what if this was really reality? If I was hit, I was on the fast track to death. I thought about using the benefit or whatever it was to leave the tower, but my feet didn't move. What Yvilk guaranteed continued ringing in my ear. I could be granted a wish at the top of the tower. A wish. The image of my sick mother flashed before my eyes. My desire to see her smile brightly at us and hug us tightly like when my brother and I were younger made me waver. All right, let's just try it once. I hardened my resolve and pressed on. First, the item I chose was the scutum. I thought it would be possible if I hid behind the shield and moved forward slowly. However, my expectations were different from reality. I couldn't tell where the arrows were coming from. There was just a swish sound and a puke sound that came after. The scutum shook like it would crack at any moment. There were multiple times when I almost lost my balance and my left arm hurt from holding the shield. The biggest problem was the direction. I could stop arrows coming from the front, below, and above, but there was nothing I could do about the ones that were coming at me from behind. When I made some progress, an arrow flew at me, and before I knew it, my left shin was pierced. I fell with a yelp. I tried to lift the shield again as soon as possible, but it was hard to raise myself because the pain was too great. There were 2 thoughts that came to mind then. One was, am I dead now? And the other was, why is this familiar? I felt a sense of déjà vu, like I had experienced this in a dream before. I had died from severe bleeding because I was mercilessly impaled by the arrows, but when I woke up again, my alarm was blaring. It felt like such a realistic dream. Of course, that was just gibberish. There was someone who saved me right before I died. It was Valdebek. I couldn't forget when I first saw him. Because of his large size, he was the perfect target for the arrows, but he just lifted me with one arm and swung his sword with the other, carrying me to the entrance. He was my savior, although I was surprised when I saw his face. Seeing how he turned around bitterly like he expected it, I got myself together and thanked him. As we spoke, I learned that Valdebek only looked scary and was actually extremely kind-hearted. Right now, people couldn't approach him because of his intimidating air, but if they knew his real personality, they would run to try to get something from him. Such a naive being needed protection. The world was such a scary place. I needed to step up to protect him, yes sir. It wouldn't be easy to find a nice person like me. Of course, I was planning to have him carry me as the price. He. Friend, you look like you're plotting something. Valdebek narrowed his eyes at me. I scoffed. Nonsense. Anyway, remember what you told me last time? Yunchi. Yeah, that. You said it was moving magic power, right? What do you do after that? Magic power. An energy that I never felt back on Earth. But in the tower, it was a bare necessity for players. I was getting special lessons from Valdebek to enter the tower. I felt like I wouldn't be able to get past section A if I didn't have it. But, no, Valdebik shook his head. Why, friend, you're still a beginner. You can't accumulate, or move energy, yet. But teaching you the activation step would be like teaching a baby how to run. Huh, it works. The F asterisk. I spread my palm open. Something that looked like white fog wafted up and twisted like a cruller. Friend, you tricked me. What, you know magic power? I didn't, I really didn't, but how can you do it so easily? Well, I'm good at everything I do. Valdebik looked at me suspiciously. Hey, you were the one who said my body was trash. Valdebik sealed his lips as if he remembered what he said the previous day. He touched my hands and feet after I told him to teach me magic power and said, friend, your body is really trash. You're gonna die at this rate. Do you know how hurt I was because of that? But the thing called magic power was easy to use once I felt it. It took about a day. Valdebik said that if you weren't talented, it could take several years just to feel it and even longer than that to use it. Was this so hard? Valdebik continued to teach me other things, not satisfied with what I could do. The next steps to using magic power after activation was granting, settling, creating, strengthening, and changing properties. Each step was fun, like a world I had never known before was opened. I begged Valdebik to teach me more. Then, I found myself being able to use all the basics of magic power after a day. No way, this doesn't make sense. It took me 10 years to do this. But friend, you did it in a single day. That's why I said I'm a genius. I raised my nose and shrugged. Valdebik spoke, blatantly staring at me. Friend. What, you're annoying. Grin, I responded with a smile. I know, but what can I do? I can't help being so great. Friend, what this time? Can I beat you up with this? He raised his large sword. After some time, Valdebik and I were so famous that everyone in the tutorial knew of us. A strange combination of a fool who didn't even know the letter M in magic and a half-giant who just swung his sword around. Did we look like Dumb and Dumber to them? I was at the front while Valdebik swung his sword energetically behind me. We slowly moved down our path. We were slow like turtles and laughed at by the skilled players, but we were still steadily making way. This time, we were getting ready to get to the middle, but someone suddenly spoke to us for the first time. She was a super pretty girl. Like an idol my age on TV. Hoo, are you guys them, lanky and sturdy? What were those horrible names? I happen to be looking for a party. As you can see, I'm slender and pretty, so everyone just looks at me slyly. I only know how to use magic, but how about it? Working together just until we clear this stage. She was a sicko too. I like that. Valdebik and I glanced at each other. He signaled for me to make the decision. For some time, I had been making decisions for our party. Unlike the dense Valdebik, I was quick to judge. We had been in need of basic magic like searching and tracking to get through Section A. No matter how sensitive Valdebik's senses were, there were limits to what traps he could detect. Moreover, a few traps needed to be destroyed by magic. It was true that we needed a mage. The question was whether we could trust her. I thought it wouldn't be bad to work together until reaching the end of Section A and judging her after. I'm Cha Jung-woo, and this is Valdebik. You, Vieira Dune. She smiled brightly as she introduced herself. The first and last witch. Me, Valdebik, Vieira Dune. Surprisingly, we worked well together. After we completed our goal, the middle section, we were able to clear Section A relatively smoothly. It was a bit difficult when we entered the boss room filled with scarecrows, but when we arrived at Section B, we were confident we could do it. The temporary party had become tightly bound with camaraderie. I made my decision. Would you like to give up the benefit, dreaming a dream? The benefit that allowed me to come and go from the tower and Earth 2 times a day. During this time, I had spent my days in the tower and my nights on Earth. It was possible because the times of the two worlds were different. However, there was still some time lost. While on Earth, the time spent in the tutorial went by quickly. If I missed it, I would probably regret it forever. I wanted to tell Hung everything so many times. What I was going through, the unimaginable things going on in this other world. But I had conflicted feelings. If I spoke of this, it was obvious he would say he would do it himself. I couldn't leave the dangerous things to him every time. So in the end, you have given up your benefit. You cannot log in nor out. A new benefit has been provided. I blocked off the path returning to Earth. Oh, tomorrow's the college entrance exam. Everyone will be worried. I didn't leave a letter or anything because I didn't want people to be worried. I was planning on returning home quickly. You have gained the benefit, drawing dreams. Benefit, drawing dreams. The player can draw the world he wants in his dreams. Past, present, and future doesn't matter, and what answers you find there can be used in reality. This is a benefit you gained by giving up the invitation from the future. You cannot change it into another benefit. I didn't understand what the benefit was, but one thing was for sure. I burned the bridge. I couldn't return to Earth until I gained what I wanted. Wish. Moreover, they said there were mysterious medicines in the tower called elixirs. Even if I couldn't reach the top, if I could get the elixirs, it would all be over. I checked my completely unfair trait called perfect adaptability. My skills right now might have been worse than others, but I was confident I could climb higher. Half a year. I clenched my fists. I'll try to get the elixir in that time, and if I can't, I'll go back. Time flowed and flowed. What started out as 3 people increased to 9, then 12. Leonte, Bahal, Ether, Balak, Leonhard, Sadi, Horst, Kuhn Khr, and Jean. Our clan, which hadn't even been around for a year, became a large clan, and I was ranked 9th. They said I had grown the fastest in the history of the tower or something like that. But the more time went on, the more rushed I felt. I couldn't find the elixir, which I thought would only take half a year. There were too many people who looked up to me for me to go back. More than anything, there were too many enemies. Could I get through them to the top? From some point, I had been doubtful. I needed to find a new way. So, you want me to open the path to Alpharon? The Martial King looked at me with disbelief. Chapter 360 Cha Jung-woo 6. Team. Yahiko, Thursdays. Actually, from the Martial King's standpoint, it was understandable that it was ridiculous. We had only passed by each other a few times during the Ball of Kings. It was extremely rude to come to the village like this. He was probably already holding back, having met me like this. But since I suddenly brought Alpharon up, of course he would get angry. Everyone knew how deep the enmity he had towards Alpharon was. The same went for me. Alpharon had killed all the draconic species in the tower. The reason why the ancient dragon Calatus, who was like a father to me, had been pained until the end was because of the aftereffects of Alpharon. Fortunately, he had returned to the arms of nature now, but I could still clearly remember how he closed his eyes for the last time in the Temple of Dragons. Please. But that was this, and this was this. I had to meet Alpharon. He had never descended from the 77th floor all this time and ruled as a wall for players. He had crushed my wish of reaching the top of the tower. Then all that was left was the elixir. The problem was that I couldn't get it at all. Even though I was considered to be a 9 king and Arthea had grown to be equal to the 8 large clans, the elixir was a mysterious medicine that was hard to attain. I learned the reason why later. Because Alpharon has it. I didn't know why he had it, just that he came across it hundreds of years ago. He might have used it in that time. Still, it was important, so I could only dream of meeting Alpharon. However, the problem was that if I met him, I would be his enemy. I had only ever seen Alpharon twice. Once was right before there was a great war when the fight between the large clans was so bad that he suddenly appeared to settle the situation. At the time, I only felt that he was extremely strong. Because my draconic eyes weren't fully grown yet, I couldn't tell how great he was. But it was different the second time. After a long search, when I finally secretly had soulstones in my possession, the stones of Superbia and Luxuria, I had been exhilarated thinking I could learn Lucille's power when he suddenly appeared. Alpharon was wrapped around in shadows, not completely revealing a body. You again. It didn't speak physically. It was a language that I didn't know. It was hard to tell if Alpharon was a man, woman, young, or old. But strangely, I could understand. Tn. We will continue our convention of referring to Alpharon by he, him pronouns for simplicity's sake. But he seemed to be familiar with me already. Was it 9 times or 10 times? Because you kept on returning, I thought you ran out of the strength to come all the way here. But you're here, still. Yes. Your fate is twisted, and your life is short. It's not different at all. You have the fate of failing many times, and you'll fail more times in the future. He continued to speak about what I couldn't understand. But it was definitely unpleasant. Failure. Fate. Those were the words I hated the most. I was annoyed, but I couldn't talk back. The existence of Alpharon that I saw through draconic eyes was so great. It was bigger than the ancient dragon Calitus, vaster than the unnamed god who sent me blessings, and more extravagant than the demon Agaras. A colossal amount of soul power that not only filled the stage but could probably crush it if the being wanted. An imposing soul pressure, like he was the only existence between the sky and the ground. I couldn't believe he was a mortal like me. I hadn't seen many gods and demons until now, but I could guarantee that he couldn't be compared to any of them. He was the world, and the world was him. All the laws in the tower revolved around him. Like how satellites circled around planets, he was the center of the world. He was continuing the passion of the draconic species, the beings who wanted to make all laws of the world theirs. Only then was I able to realize how the great draconic species fell without being able to injure him in the slightest. Why players hadn't been able to get past the 77th floor for thousands of years. Why the gods and demons were ripped apart from him when they tried to leave the 98th floor. If such a being existed smack dab in the middle, who'd be able to stop him? Also, the moment that the eyes hidden in the shadow met mine, I felt like my soul and body were being split apart. Oh ho, there's still been some improvement. You can look me in the eye now. The hidden eyes were definitely smiling. Having the right eyes, but not being able to see your path. It's a sad fate. That might be why you're continuing to dream to find the path hidden by darkness. But you still haven't found the light. What a shame, child. Out of the words Alpharon said, the word, dream, lingered in my head. I thought of the benefit I still hadn't mustered the will to use because I didn't understand. Had Alpharon seen it? I hope Lucille's fire can brighten your path. Right now, it's just a candle that'll go out powerlessly. Grow it, using any means possible. If you use the same method again, you'll just repeat things over and over again. You'll only get hurt if you walk in place. Alpharon added on more, like he pitied me. I hope his light can shine on your path. Alpharon disappeared, having only spoken what he wanted to. I didn't speak of this to anyone and kept it to myself. I tried to uncover the meaning behind his words. The three main skills of Alpharon were Shukuchi, immortality, and thousandly eyes. However, the ancient dragon Calitus told me a few more. Foresight. Not only could he see the future of someone, but he could also see their present and past. A person with such power wouldn't speak nonsense. But still, I didn't understand what he said. I wanted to ask about it, along with the whereabouts of the elixir. What did he mean when he said I'd fail multiple times? However, there was no way for me to get to the 77th floor where Alpharon resided. The red dragon on the 76th floor would never let me through. I wasn't on bad terms with the Summer Queen, but things weren't good between us either. If I touched her trauma, Alpharon, she would shoot her breath at me without any hesitation. The Martial King was different. He knew a shortcut to the 77th floor, Alpharon's territory. The problem was, do you know about what kind of being Alpharon is? He didn't seem to want to help me. I do. No, you don't know what kind of being he is. Quote, he's the apostle of the tower. He's the laws of the tower themselves. You can stand against that? No way. I clenched my teeth. You're not going to open the path until the end. The Martial King raised a corner of his lips. Why should I? I don't have the loyalty nor reason to. Why should I bother myself? Then, I spread my sky wings apart. Dragon Slayer was held in my hands. I'll have to make you. What's up with your face? I don't know. Don't ask. Leonhardt pointed at my face, but I just covered it with a grumble. That damned geezer. It wasn't fair that he went for my eyes as soon as we started. Thanks to him, I returned to the clan house with a black eye like a panda. The Martial King probably let me off easily. Still, I felt wronged. Damn it. There's something there. The relationship between the Martial King and Alpharon. I didn't know what it was, but I was sure of one thing. I didn't have the power to enter it. There was only one option left. Climbing the tower on my own strength and meeting Alpharon then. I became dizzy just thinking about it. The time I spent until now wasn't few at all, but how much more time did I have to spend here now? I was worried that Mom's illness became worse because she was worried about me. Hung was probably worried too. But I couldn't return to Earth. Then, I'd be marked as eliminated, and not be able to return. Right, Sati and Kun Khr are here. The members who joined the latest after the clan was created. Arthea was currently being watched and threatened by many. We were preparing for war against the Bloodland because the Gluttony Emperor wanted to prey on me. Our clan members were visiting different large clans for allies. I heard they had gone to Devil Army and the Sea of Time. I didn't know about the Devil Army, but there was a chance for the Sea of Time. But, nothing. Leonhardt shook his head dejectedly and added on. Discussions with Bloodland have come to an end too. They want you. Leonhardt was famous for being wise while he was an outstanding sword wielder. If he said the discussions were over, it meant there really wasn't any way. So in the end, it's another war. I sighed, laying against a chair. It hadn't been that long since we fought a war, but there was another war. I wasn't scared, however, it would just eat at the time I needed to climb the tower. I felt frustrated. I'd like to leave the clan. The shocking announcement that Kun Khr made in the announcement shook Arthea. Hey, why so suddenly? We were drinking together just fine yesterday. Is it because of Sati? How about you think about it again? No, it's the decision I came to after thinking about it all night. If you'd like to punish me, I'll take it gladly. Kun Khr seemed to be firm. It was probably because of Sati, who passed away in battle some time ago. Sati and Kun Khr were lovers. They were thinking about getting married after the war was over. The war had broken everything apart. Alright, hey, Cha Jung-woo, you can't just send him like that. Stay well, don't be beat up anywhere. If you are, I'm gonna find you and beat you up. Thank you for everything. Kun Khr left after bowing for a while. The other clan members looked disconcerted. The reason why they had been able to endure all the wars was because of our tight camaraderie. But with one gone, it was expected to feel low-spirited. What was more, Kun Khr was my disciple, so they probably felt even more betrayed. Kun Khr looked guilty until the end, but I sent him away with a smile. I was the one who should have been feeling guilty. Hey, why does everyone look so depressed? It'll be fine if we just do what we're supposed to do. I didn't like a downcast atmosphere. I tried to get up, clapping my hands together. The world spun, and I found myself falling over. When I tried to catch my balance, I couldn't put strength in my legs. I could see the clan members running frantically over while shouting my name, but I couldn't hear anything because of the ringing in my ear. The world was still spinning, and something poured out from my mouth. It was a clump of blood with black liquid. The toxic smell of devil poison stung my nose. I felt something go wrong in my heart. Chapter 361 Cha Jung-woo 7. Team. Yahiko, Thursdays. For sure, the culprit is among the members. Vieira Dune examined my body and frowned. After multiple tests, the color red, which meant I was critical, popped up. It meant that someone had poisoned me for a long time so carefully that my trait, perfect adaptability, hadn't been able to catch it. Arthea was a very closed clan. Even after becoming a large clan, we only accepted a few members. It was impossible to join if you weren't recommended by someone I knew or accepted by the majority after a vote. This was why although our numbers were few in war, our bond and trust in each other were superior. There were even a few who were ready to give their lives for the clan. That was how Sati had died. After getting caught in a trap by enemies, she had volunteered to turn their attention away so the rest of the clan members could escape. It was obvious how Kun Khr, who had been unconscious because of an injury, felt at the time. But, an assassination attempt, and it was a bit embarrassing to say it myself, but I was the clan's leader and center. If it became known that I was poisoned for such a long time, there would be distrust among the clan members. Moreover, everyone was going through a hard time with Kun Khr's leave. I couldn't add fuel to the fire. Vieira, yeah, I spoke, putting my shirt back on. Don't tell this to anyone. If they ask, just say it's because I overworked myself for the past few days. But, please, I don't want to make people more disoriented. And since we found out, we can start treating it. You're so. Vieira Dune looked at me with frustration. She seemed to have a lot to say, but she just grinned as she shook her head like nothing could be done. Fine, you're usually sly like a fox but dense like a bear when it comes to things like this. Although that's why I like you. Laughing, she hugged me. I hugged her back and laughed. A bear. It might have been reflected by my desire to take after my brother in that aspect. Even so, I was grateful that I was still alive. I thought that I was going to die when I fell. No, I actually felt like I died. Being relieved by the fact that it was just needless concern, I pulled her tighter to me. We stayed like that, feeling each other's warmth. I was happy at that moment. I didn't know it was poison. The peace we had for some time was quickly broken. Bad news. There was another bomb thrown at our clan with the news Leonhardt brought. Friend, what is it? Kun Khr, that crazy bastard. Leonhardt couldn't speak properly because he had run all the way here. For a moment, anxiety flashed through me. I thought of Kun Khr's face when he had bowed apologetically. At the end, he looked like he had made his decision on something. Why hadn't I been able to tell back then? Before Leonhardt could speak, I quickly hurried my companions. Valdebek, get dragon killers. Vieira, check how many chimeras we can use at the moment. Bahal, Leonte, check our manpower. Quick, now. The clan members all rushed around, probably having thought the same thing as me. However, no one spoke about the anxiousness they felt. It was because words could become reality. The thought that I had to rescue Kun Khr was the only one in my head. But when we arrived at the temporary base of Bloodland, we stood there blankly for a while. Kun Khr's head was hung on a pole, face still crumpled with rage. Blood dripped below, not having dried yet. Crack, my heart that went wrong was slowly breaking apart. Was it from then? The clan members didn't talk. We all strategized during conferences when there was a war and discussed our enemies, but it was rare that we spoke about personal business. It seemed like we were just fighting when we needed to fight and resting when we needed to rest. Everyone was tired and done. Valdebek and Leonhardt tried to lift the atmosphere up, but everyone just smiled bitterly. The sound of happy laughter couldn't be heard anymore. I also wanted to lead the clan properly, but because the devil poison entered my heart, it was hard to do so. Because I was keeping the seizures down and focusing on war, I didn't have the mind to look around me. The reason why I wasn't that worried was probably because I believed things would be back to normal again. I didn't know my baseless faith was making the clan members more exhausted. The sharp atmosphere that felt like walking on top of knives exploded. With Bahal, so he crossed over to Red Dragon. All the clan members glanced at each other without saying anything. It was that shocking. Although we hadn't spoken to each other recently, one comrade who had been walking shoulder to shoulder with us had crossed over to the enemies. The atmosphere couldn't help but become despondent. The problem was that no one saw it coming. However, the changes didn't end there. It was only hard the first time. Ether left. Horst was blinded by money that enemies offered and died while trying to assassinate me in the middle of a battlefield. Balak left with a smile after planting poison in me. The devil poison that had settled down a bit turned worse and my dragon heart was completely destroyed. Valdebek disappeared one day without any word and Leonte stabbed me in the heart after putting me in a trap. Leonhardt tried to calm me down, but he couldn't take it and left for the Sea of Time. Other clans that had expressed goodwill to me turned their backs as well. The places I helped, the places that swore their allegiance to me, places that promised friendship. They called themselves my wings when I was shining brightly, but when I fell into darkness, they pretended like this didn't know me. I refused. How could everyone leave? How could everyone turn their backs? How? Trust returned to me with betrayal. I died multiple times in that process and was revived again and again. My resolve to get the elixir barely got me through. When I collected my wits, Vieira Dune was the only was left behind. My lover, my everything. If I have you, it's okay if the entire world abandons me. I can start again, and I can wake up. Fuke, you were always someone that shined like the stars in the sky. Although you seemed arrogant and proud, you were warm inside. But, I don't want to see you pathetic like this. I just want to remember your shining moments. That's okay, right? A sword that hurt more than Leonte stabbed at my wound that was barely closed. But what hurt more than that was my lover's words. I was able to realize who the culprit behind the devil poison was. I love you, she whispered into my ears and disappeared. The sky was falling. But, go, the eyes that were looking at me sadly. What kind of face was I making? Was it crumpled from pain, or annoyed? Or, was it overwhelmed with sadness? Don't show yourself again, ever, Ananta, a woman I was grateful towards for staying by my ruined side until the end. Although I knew she liked me, I rejected her. Vieira Dune's emotions were more important to me. I was a fool who didn't know how to read people. It was the reason why I had to push her away. I had no hope. The situation around me was worse. I couldn't pull that beautiful and kind person into this mess. Ananta hesitated in her eyes as she looked at me. She looked like she wanted to say something. Her eyes were filled with pity. Then, she bit her lower lip like she decided something and spoke with firm eyes. Anything. The strength in her voice rang in my heart. I thought it had been destroyed a long time ago, but it seemed like it could still do some of its function. I'll do anything I can to protect. With those words, she left. I collapsed where I was standing. Without a sound, I sobbed. I wanted to shout countless times to stay by my side. That I was lonely, that this place was cold, that I was tired, pained. I wanted to say that, but I forced myself not to every time. I'll do anything I can to protect. Ananta's words moved me. I didn't know what she was going to protect, but I had something to protect as well. I put my hand into my breast pocket. There was a glass bottle with a sparkling blue liquid in it. The elixir, the mysterious medicine that would treat my mother. It was the medicine I got from Alfreon on the 77th floor and forcing my way through the 76th floor. Is this your 4th time here? The time, yes, you're closer than before, but that's all. Nothing has changed. I suppose the fate engraved into your soul doesn't change. Alfreon was still surrounded by darkness and fog, but he spoke like he was proud of me as he pat my head. Child, dreaming of nightmares over and over again, being trapped inside a cycle. I hope you can escape the nightmares and see your path someday. I still couldn't understand what he was saying, but I could tell he was encouraging me. There was still one person who encouraged me when everyone had abandoned me. Alfreon gave me the elixir, saying I did a good job. Even though I didn't ask him for it, he gave it to me as if he understood. He returned to where he had been and looked up at the glittering night sky. The night sky was beautiful. The galaxy that split through the center of the sky and the beautiful stars that sparkled around it. I was impressed by the scene that I just looked at it blankly for a while. And I don't remember, but I probably cried. My eyes were wet when I came to attention. Then, I returned to the hidden stage of the 50th floor where the clan house was. I was already destroyed beyond recovery after getting through Red Dragon and fighting the Summer Queen, but the encouragement Alfreon gave me along with the galaxy of stars gave me a taste of happiness. While I touched the elixir, I was hit with the impulse to drink it. But I knew that healing myself was impossible even with the elixir, so I shook my head. I didn't forget my resolve since I first entered the tower. The promise to get it to Mom. There was a problem, though. I had to retire to return to Earth. I couldn't climb the tower again, but I didn't have much to live so it didn't matter. However, the problem was that the 50th floor was filled with enemies who came after sensing the catastrophe from the 76th floor. I needed to get through them to retire. I didn't have the strength left to do so. What could I do? How could I get through them to give the elixir to Mom? I was deep in thought for a while. A god quietly observes you. I lifted my head at the message that suddenly popped up. It was the gaze that appeared from time to time. The being had interested in me but never revealed their name. Even now, when I was stronger, I couldn't tell any of the being's characteristics to tell what kind of position they had or what their identity was. But what inspired me wasn't the message. It was the being's actions. Do I have to get through all the enemies? Everything will be over if I lose the elixir. If I can leave it to someone I trust. There was no one I could trust in this world. No. There was one person, Hung, but it's dangerous for Hung to come here without anything. It had been a long time since I left Earth, so his personality could have changed, but the world of the tower was rough and difficult. Even Hung could struggle to get to where I was. However, if Hung could see the path I came, if he could see the path I walked like how the gods and demons on the 98th floor looked at the lower world, he could get here quickly. I quickly pulled out the pocket watch and soulstone. A memory with my brother could definitely hold my memories and vestige, and the stone of Superbia could be the medium. No, that wasn't enough. Then it would only be a simple diary. The item I created had to help Hung find his path. But the path I walked was a failed one. I couldn't suggest this to him. I had to find a more efficient and correct path for him. Then what did I need to do? A god watches you. I was deep in thought again. A god takes interest in your decision. There was a way. The benefit. What I gained a long time ago but hadn't been able to use because I didn't know how. A god smiles with satisfaction at the choice you made. The benefit, drawing dreams, was like a simulation. It would take the same situation and conditions to choose a few variables for the best possible ending. The answer that I found could influence reality to create an advantageous result. However, I had never used it before. At first, I didn't know how to, and after I did, there were too many conditions that were needed. No, it was a benefit that a mortal couldn't use. The results of the dream being applied to reality meant it would influence the principles of causality. Gods and demons wouldn't be able to touch them easily either. It was a power that only an almighty being who surpassed a superior divine being might be able to do. That was why I didn't attempt it, but if the limits were changed, the story was different. If the information about the tower was copied to create a small tower inside the storage location, and the simulations could continue in the form of dreams, the data could continue to gather to find the most successful and efficient result. Wouldn't the result be able to help Hung somehow then? In the world created in this tower, unlike how I failed, there could be a successful me. A smile grew on my mouth as I thought that. That moment, my eyes widened. Then, I looked around. It was a vivid realistic world. But suddenly, everything felt in vain. I realized the secret of where I was. This is all a dream. There were memories that floated around in my head from time to time. Moments that I was happy, sad, and lonely. What I thought was simply a dream or déjà vu had actually happened. At the very least, in this world. That meant one thing. In the end, I tightened my grip on the pocket watch. A bitter smile spread on my face. Even in a dream like this, there was never a time when I smiled at the end. Stupid jackass. Yian Wu clenched his teeth looking at the countless scenes created by the letters, Jungwoo in his arms. There were multiple events happening there. They all had one thing in common. Jungwoo was at the center of it. And Jungwoo had died from multiple reasons. The Jungwoo who died from overbleeding when the rain of arrows got through his shield. The Jungwoo who fell for the trap set up by scavengers when he was just about to enter the tutorial. There was a Jungwoo who died after fighting Alpharon and a Jungwoo who died from his magic power circuit exploding when trying to absorb the soul stone. At the very end, when he took the elixir, he realized reality, and closed his eyes, bitterly rubbing the pocket watch. Yian Wu looked down at his brother in his arms. To be honest, he had some questions during all this time. Each of the hidden pieces in his brother's diary was rare and precious. Items that large clans would have tried to hoard it to themselves if they found out. There was the Batory's vampiric sword and the treasure of Olympus. Yian Wu wondered why no one had taken them all this time. If they were things his brother after repeating his life multiple times, it made sense. The path that Yian Wu walked was one that was gained after his brother died tens, hundreds, no maybe even thousands of times in that cycle. Also Yian Wu didn't have to walk the same difficult path that he did. He was fine with getting hurt. That was why the only thing Yian Wu could say when he saw his brother was that he was stupid. No matter how much the dreams repeated, there would be memories left in his subconscious. Then, his soul would be eroded bit by bit. Still, he wasn't stopping. The same went for now. Jungwoo didn't seem to plan on opening his eyes. He was continuing to walk his lost path in the world of dreams. A god is looking at you with sad eyes. Yian Wu lifted his head at the sudden message. The message that had followed Jungwoo around since he entered the tower. Jungwoo hadn't been able to learn who it was until he died, but not Yian Wu. She was connected to Yian Wu too strongly through the channeling. Did you see this future since Jungwoo first came here? A god is silent. Yian Wu narrowed his eyes. Athena. Note. Thanks everyone for your patience till now. According to current situation HH will be able to return back to translating in a week, so probably by next week we will be back to normal. Chapter 362 Cha Jungwoo 8. Team. HH, Yahiko, Thursdays. The owl of Athena spreads its wings only with the falling of the dusk. It was the most famous aphorism relating to Athena. The light that shined through darkness represented wisdom, strategy, tactics, courage, combative spirit, justice, wisdom, artistic skill. All of it related to the tower. Because of this, Athena was worshipped by countless heroes, and she protected them. Players who climbed the tower to prove themselves would say that she had blessed their luck and fate. It wasn't strange that she had read some luck and fate from his brother, who entered the tower only on an invitation. Actually, Yian Wu had more than one or two things he was curious about Athena. Athena had no reason to look upon him kindly. Their point of contact was Aegis, but he hadn't done anything to have her goodwill towards him. But if it was because of guilt she had towards his brother, things changed. Athena had read the luck and fate of her brother, which was why she always looked at him sadly but never showed herself. Then, when Yian Wu appeared after his brother called him and she was trying to help him because she felt sorry. It made sense. Is that it? Yian Wu revealed all his thoughts and looked at Athena's gaze. Athena is silent. Athena looks at you with sad eyes. But Athena didn't say anything, like always. Athena drops her head powerlessly. She probably didn't want to speak about what she did. However, Yian-Wu felt like he knew what the luck and fate she read from his brother was. To be exact, it was his luck and fate, not Jung-Woo's. The Black King. Persephone said that the Black King was hated by Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades' generation. On the other hand, she said that gods in her and Athena's generation didn't think too badly of him. She added on that a few of them actually admired him. At first, Yian-Wu thought the Black King was Kronos. The kings of Titans who fought over Olympus in the Great War against Zeus's generation and fell to his demise in the Titanomachia was Kronos. However, despite what Persephone said about not being able to mention the Black King because of the pledge on Styx, Hades had spoken about Kronos with ease. In fact, Kronos' corpse was still left behind in Tartarus, being absorbed by the Titans and giants. It was most likely that the Black King wasn't Tartarus. His identity was confusing, but the influence the Black King had over Olympus was great. No, the power of the being who was respected by gods and demons beyond Olympus was being continued in Yian-Wu. Like how Hermes seemed to like the Black King, it seemed like Athena admired the Black King. If she had seen some future related to the Black King and his brother, and that was why they were like this today, it made sense that Athena was always with him. Athena is silent. Just what is it? Yian-Wu couldn't help but think about the Black King again. On one side, he was annoyed. It was because he felt like his brother and he had been moving by a plot that someone had already written. Athena shakes her head, saying that's not it. Yian-Wu scoffed. He felt grateful to her for treating him warmly all this time, but he couldn't trust her anymore. There was no way for her to change the luck and fate of his brother since she was trapped on the 98th floor, but he couldn't look at her kindly considering how she hadn't helped his brother at all. Athena's shoulders droop. Hermes pats her, smiling bitterly. Agaras giggles at the position she's in. Hermes opens his eyes widely in anger. Agaras snorts, asking what he's gonna do. Sparks fly between Agaras and Hermes. The Godly Society open angle bracket Olympus close angle bracket refuses to participate. The Demonic Society open angle bracket L'Infernal close angle bracket announces they will not help Agaras. Messages popped up about Hermes and Agares' battle of wits, but Yian-Wu ignored it. He needed to wake his brother up. But how? Although he had taken all the purple energy from the medium, the soul, the benefit was still in progress. He happened to see Jung-Woo close his eyes powerlessly after rubbing the pocket watch in a scene. In another corner, Jung-Woo was entering the tutorial. No matter how much Yian-Wu shook him or shocked him with magic power, his brother didn't budge, his white wings wrapped around him. Yian-Wu glared at his brother with annoyance and turned to the scenes created by the letters. The only thing I can do is break the benefit. Muttering to himself that it was the only option, he spread his fire wings apart. Red and black wings that were completely different from the sky wings illuminated the world. He shot his consciousness inside of it. TN, wings of fire will be changed to fire wings. The synchronization is being strengthened. You are being connected to player Cha Jung-Woo. Although I was just barely passing through the entrance of Section A, the shield I was holding was covered in arrows. My hands and feet trembled from the traps that kept on activating. What could I do? How could I get through? My head was blank. I couldn't think of anything. I never would have come if I knew it was a place like this. I wanted to go home. I missed Mom. But when I thought of Mom, I clenched my teeth again. My mother, who was probably bedridden in the hospital. The desire to see her smile again flamed up. I tried to step forward again, getting a grip on myself. Swish. It was very small, but I heard something flying from behind me. My reaction was late. All the traps had only come from the front. I was flustered, not knowing what to do. My body reflexively turned around and my right hand stretched out. The arrow was sucked into my hand, and I didn't stop there. I twisted my arm to turn the direction of the arrow away. Clang! It collided with an arrow that happened to be coming from the opposite side. I had done it without even realizing it. Looking down at my face with an unbelieving face, I whipped my head behind me. It definitely felt like someone helped me from behind, but there was no one there. It had been a familiar feeling. Was I deluding myself? I muttered, thinking of the person who wasn't here. I clenched my fists again. Although I had done without realizing it, I became confident. The thought to go forward filled my head. I got into the proper position behind my scutum and slowly marched forward again. My shaking legs were still. One by one, the world began to change. There behind us. Viera, ice wall. Walls of ice suddenly pierced up from the ground. The attacks on us were scattered and the skangers who tried to attack me from behind were lost in the maze of the ice walls. Kook, too, thinking it was a relief, I spit roughly on the ground. If it was just a little late, everything would have been over. But, who told me? I wasn't able to see when we needed to attack because of the dust clouds blinding my vision, but I was thankfully right on time because someone had said, now. The voice was familiar. It was like Hung's voice. PSH. I smirked, knowing that it wasn't possible. How could Hung be here, when he was on Earth? Still, I was grateful that we were victorious thanks for the illusion that sounded like Hung's voice. You sons of B*******. You're all dead. I gripped my sword and ran at them. Every time I thought I might die, someone was there. Next to me, the clan members were silent at Kun Kachar's announcement saying he wanted to leave the clan. I slowly stood up. The gazes of the clan members followed me. Kun looked at me with a blank face, not understanding what I was trying to do. I grinned at him, flock, and brought my fist down on his head. Ack, Kun Khr grabbed his head and stumbled over his feet. His face that looked prepared to fight was now tearful. He was looking at me questioningly, like he felt wronged. I snorted, you're looking me in the eye right now. Do you think you have the right to? ... Shut up, and trust me. I'll take care of your revenge. But, tisk, cutting him off, I looked at him with fierce eyes. You can just accept it with a thank you, why are you still talking? Shut up and follow me. Normally, I would have let him leave, since he had probably thought about his decision several times, but I felt like I would regret it someday. I didn't want to lose someone special to me. What would Hung have done here? The answer came easily. I kneeled and looked him in the eyes. Stroking his head, I smiled warmly. I'll be your lighthouse. There were times when I regretted my wrong choices. I could have made better ones. Why didn't I step up during those times? Vieira, what? It was you who poisoned me. What? Crunch. Damned B******. All those moments changed. Marshal King Agency. What now? Did you come because you want to get beat up like yesterday? No, I just wanted to say this to you. You should know how to be nice sometimes, and give to your hubes. Try to tone down your temper. You must really wanna die, huh? I'll die sometime anyway. Whatever. If you want to kill me, go ahead. I don't care anymore. Go, stab me. If those changed moments could create a new future. Ananta, what? I smiled faintly at her, who was about to turn away with disappointment. Thank you, for everything. Could I smile at the end? Crack, I heard something breaking somewhere. No. Could I smile now? It was the sound of a firm glass wall cracking. The cracks spread from it like spider webs and covered the entire wall. The world came crumbling down. The many me's were connected as one. With all the vestige and information that came into my head felt like it was going to splut, but I was able to realize what was happening. Slowly, I pulled back the wings that were wrapped around me. Beyond them, I could see a familiar face. A face that looked exactly like mine, as if I was looking into a mirror. But it was so cold that it was ugly. Yes, my face was better off than that. So you came, Hung. Looking at me smile brightly, Hung opened his arms with an indifferent face. Was he asking for a hug? He seemed like a robot because he was doing it with that face. Still, my tears brimmed in his eyes because it had been a long while since we met. He was the same as ever in that his heart was warm while his face was cold. I grinned, thinking I should hug him. Smack, ack. Hung suddenly hit the back of my head. My head felt like it was vibrating. Chapter 363 Sky Wings 1. Team. Yahiko, Thursdays. What are you? It hurt so much that tears brimmed in my eyes. I was about to argue with him. Hung suddenly hugged me tightly, as if he would never let go. Never again. I felt my shoulder becoming wet. Don't ever leave without a word again. I'll really kill you then. He was saying that we should never split up again, right? What a tsunere. No, his tone was kind of a yandere. Of course, I didn't say it out loud because I would probably get beat up again. I hugged my brother back. Okay, I'm back, Hung. Yianwu slowly opened his eyes. He was in the real world, not the white world of letters. Brahm and Heneva were looking at him with concern. Are you all right, fool? Why would you suddenly faint after touching the pocket watch? Brahm cast magic on Yianwu to check if he was hurt anyway. Heneva's face was filled with worry while he shouted at Yianwu angrily. Yi and Wu said he was alright and turned to Brontes, who was staring at him. How long was I like this? Open hollow corner bracket. It's been about 3 days. Yi and Wu clicked his tongue. He didn't know it had been that long. But in a way, it was expected. He needed an extreme amount of concentration just to take care of the energy within the soul stone. And considering the events that happened in the white world, 3 days was actually quite fast. Open hollow corner bracket. I told everyone else that you were busy because something came up. Thank you. Open hollow corner bracket. But Brontes trailed off, narrowing his eyes. Open hollow corner bracket. Looks like you unsealed the soul stone, is that right? Yes, sir. Open hollow corner bracket. That was possible. Thankfully, I had a helpful tool. Open hollow corner bracket. Still, that's amazing. Brontes had studied soulstones his entire life, so he began to admire the two brothers for being able to handle it. Open hollow corner bracket. Then do you think you can use its power? Yi and Wu shook his head. Since there's a big difference between handling it and using it. But I think if I keep on researching it, I will be able to someday. Yi and Wu felt the philosopher's stone next to his heart. The vibrating philosopher's stone was fine, like it had never absorbed all that energy. He couldn't even sense any difference. However, when he used the philosopher's stone as a core to move magic power, that wasn't the case at all. His magic power was stronger than before. Just by getting his magic circuit to flow, he felt all his senses wake up. The 3 blessings, draconic, divine, and demonic, were activated by it. The quality of his magic power was incomparable to before. Could it even be called simply magic power now? It was such a pure and deeply concentrated magic power, sticky like darkness in a void. It was completely different from what he handled before. He considered calling it something else. Later, gathering magic power in his hands, he smiled faintly. This is enough. Clearing his thoughts, he spoke to Heneva and Brahm, who were still looking at him concernedly. There's someone I want to introduce to you two. Would you like to meet him? The two tilted their heads, wondering what nonsense he was talking about. Heneva frowned and touched Yi and Wu's forehead. Do you have a fever? No, sir. Then what? Before Heneva could finish, Yi and Wu pushed the magic power gathered in his hands into the pocket watch. The paused hands of the watch began to whirl around, vibrating. Black letters floated above the glass cover. The letters inside the diary came out as words and swirled around him. Then, they gathered at the center and took the faint form of a person. The more his facial features became clearer, the more emotions flashed across Brahm and Heneva's face. First, interest, then curiosity, suspicion, shock, certainty, and joy. Why, you? Heneva was so shocked that he almost fell over. When the letters finished forming a human face, the thing with Jungwoo's face looked around and smiled mischievously at Heneva. Open hollow corner bracket. Old man, long time no see. Clang, the hammer in Heneva's hand dropped to the floor. Tears dripped down from the wrinkled corners of his eyes. The face that he hated but missed was there. Is it really you? Open hollow corner bracket. Goodness. Our old man must be losing his vision loss due to age. How can you already not be able to see properly? Wait, my face isn't one that can be forgotten that easily. Then do you have dementia, Alred? I see it really is you after hearing you blabber on. Heneva fumbled with his short arms and pulled Jungwoo to him. Open hollow corner bracket. Gosh, why are you being so clingy? Jungwoo spoke like he was going to push Heneva away but hugged Heneva back with a grin. He had missed Heneva too. The only person who never left his side through the endless cycle of dreams. He truly was like a father. Brahm looked at the two with red eyes. He also felt tearful. During times like this, he despised his homunculus body. Then, he must have realized something strange while looking at Jungwoo and tilted his head. Widening his eyes, he turned to Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu, did you? He quietly asked through the connection so Jungwoo and Heneva couldn't hear. Yi and Wu firmly shook his head. Open hollow corner bracket. Please don't tell them anything. Open hollow corner bracket. Brahm's eyes shook for a moment, but he bit his lower lip and nodded his head. Open hollow corner bracket. All right. Understood. Open hollow corner bracket. I'm really tired. I can really take a nap, right? Jungwoo glanced at Yi and Wu while nodding. Although he acted fine on this outside, he was actually extremely worried. It was because his soul was too worn after going through all the cycles from the benefit. This meant that he could be scattered into basic spirit at any moment. In fact, it was a miracle that he was able to keep his identity at the present without becoming less than a ghost. Although Yi and Wu filled Jung Woo with black energy, there were limits to restoring a broken level. If he wanted, he could be raised to a monster portent level, but things could possibly become worse. Jung Woo knew his condition well, so he just felt more cautious. He was finally getting to meet all the people he missed after waking up from his long slumber. He didn't want to close his eyes again. But since he was less than a ghost, there was nothing he could do at the moment. Don't worry, Yi and Wu just pat his brother's head. He was speaking without emotion, but Jung Woo felt comforted by it. Open hollow corner bracket okay. Jung Woo closed his eyes with a bright face. With a swoosh sound, his spirit body scattered and letters returned to the pocket watch. Yi and Wu stroked the pocket watch and turned to Heneva and the others. This watch is like Jung Woo's house. We have to fix it to heal Jung Woo. Alright, I'll help you with anything I can. Heneva raised his sleeves and asked what he needed to start with. Brahm and the three Cyclops brothers moved busily as well. With commands from Yi and Wu, different jobs of fixing the pocket watch were assigned to them. The party began to fix its broken pieces. Thankfully, after moving all the purple energy into the pocket watch, examining the pocket watch went smoothly. It was created using Sutra Bhasya as a foundation. Then it'll be easy to fix it. Brahm smiled as he examined the formation of the pocket watch. Sutra Bhasya was a type of study that he had created. He was proud that what he created had been raised to this level. Yi and Wu had seen most of the secrets of the pocket watch when he peeked into Jung Woo's benefit, so its recovery was faster than when they created Kaini. Open hollow corner bracket the outside is the best. Jung Woo left the pocket watch frequently and moved around freely. He was so energetic, like all the concerns of him being able to wake up were futile. He annoyed them because he kept on poking into what they were doing, and eventually Heneva, who was trying to understand him as much as he could, exploded. You're so hectic. Go away. Of course, Jung Woo wasn't one to listen. It was a relief he wasn't able to move far away from the pocket watch. If it wasn't for that, he would probably poke around the entire holy territory. After that short commotion, the restoration of the pocket watch was finished. Tick, tock. Under the clean glass cover, the hands of the clock pointed at the right time. The seconds needle clicked forward, showing that the pocket watch was functioning perfectly. The only number left behind was 12. They had left it like that intentionally so its initial form wouldn't be gone forever. Open hollow corner bracket looking at this, I miss it. Jung Woo grinned, rubbing the fixed pocket watch. He smiled sullenly when his finger passed through the clock. He could use it by using his soul power, but there was still a difference. The fact that he had died became clearer to him. However, Jung Woo didn't express his feelings and turned the pocket watch over with a bright smile. He could see the familiar letters. J, W, C, A, H. Open hollow corner bracket when I saw this, I wondered when you would grow up. Yi and Wu frowned. He didn't have any words to say. Back then, he really hadn't known any time. When he tried to pick up studying, it was horrible. Open hollow corner bracket and then you went to Africa into a multinational group. A lot has changed, hasn't it? Jung Woo and Yi and Wu had many conversations when Jung Woo came out of the pocket watch. Jung Woo was able to learn what happened during the time he was gone through the lenses of his twin brother. He thought many things had changed. 5 years on Earth wasn't a short time. Moreover, what Yi and Wu experienced in the tower was all amusing. Actually, Jung Woo didn't expect that Yi and Wu would be able to find him in the Soulstone. That was how complex the formation of the Soulstone was, and its secrets couldn't be unlocked easily. When he heard that Yi and Wu used the Philosopher's Stone that was in his heart, he was surprised. There was nothing he left behind about the Philosopher's Stone in the hidden pieces. Other than that, there were many things Yi and Wu accomplished by himself. Things like Vigrid and the demonic divine dragon body. They were all things Yi and Wu achieved on his own. Jung Woo thought that even if he hadn't left anything behind, Yi and Wu would have grown finely on his own, although it might have taken longer. That's hung for you. He thought it was like Yi and Wu to do that. Because of that, open hollow corner bracket hung. What? Jung Woo was able to ask what he had been hesitating to. Open hollow corner bracket what about Mom? He thought that even if Yi and Wu did find him, it would have been after he arrived on the 50th floor and gained the elixir. He had hesitated to ask the question because he thought Yi and Wu would have returned to Earth to heal their mother already. While he awaited the answer, his heart thumped in his chest. She left peacefully. However, Yi and Wu didn't say the answer that Jung Woo wanted. He just spoke in a calm voice. Open hollow corner bracket oh. Still, She believed in you until the end. And she smiled. She said she didn't want to look sad when you came back. Open hollow corner bracket I see. Jung-woo clenched his fists. A shadow appeared on his face, and Yeon-woo couldn't read it. Yeon-woo pretended not to see and turned away. Jung-woo's shoulders were shaking. Jung-woo raised his head, collecting himself. He didn't look sad anymore. His firm eyes that were fixed on Yeon-woo seemed to have decided something. Open hollow corner bracket I heard I have a daughter. Had he heard from Brahm already? Jung-woo didn't seem fazed in the slightest even after hearing about the daughter he didn't know he had. No, he had probably come to terms with it and created a new goal for himself. Although he wasn't able to save their mother, the will to save his child at the very least helped Jung-woo to get up again. Open hollow corner bracket I was a bad son, but I want to be a parent like mom. Because their mother loved them so much, Jung-woo wanted to be like her. Open hollow corner bracket so. He put emphasis on his words. Open hollow corner bracket I want to live again. Yeon-woo looked at his little brother. Open hollow corner bracket and I want to hug Sesha with my own arms, like mom did for us. Do you think that's possible? Chapter 364 Sky Wings 2. Team. Yahiko, Thursdays. Jung-woo's gaze was intense. What you're saying about living again, it's different from Brahm's case, right? Open hollow corner bracket yeah. Jung-woo nodded. Open hollow corner bracket you know that my case is different from Brahm. I want to feel Sesha with my own hands. Brahm was originally a god and temporarily created a body for himself in the lower world. Although he used a homunculus body, he had technically just moved from one vessel to another. However, Jung-woo was different. He was originally human. Even though he had his identity, of course he would long for when he had blood and flesh. Furthermore, Yeon-woo knew what Jung-woo wanted. He probably wants to age with them, since he hasn't been able to. Jung-woo wanted to share warmth with Ananta and Sesha. He wanted to laugh and talk with them happily in the same time as them. Since that was the happiness that Jung-woo wished for. The time when their mother, Yeon-woo, and Jung-woo was the happiest filled with laughter, although they were poor. Open hollow corner bracket do you think it's possible? Jung-woo carefully glanced at Yeon-woo, unlike his usual carefree attitude. He knew how ridiculous the request he was making was. No one had succeeded in it before. It was an event that occurred in legends or myths. Summoning the soul of the dead or reviving one who had died recently were miracles that did happen rarely, but it had already been a long time since Jung-woo had died, and his body was already burned and scattered, so it was near impossible for him to be resurrected. Furthermore, Jung-woo's soul was currently at the lowest condition it could be in, so even if he went to the beyond, it was probably unlikely that he would be reincarnated. The fact that he can bind souls and handle them is already a nonsensical authority. The sullen smile didn't leave Jung-woo's mouth as he spoke his wish. It was a miracle that he had left the pocket watch to come into the outside world. He was being greedy. His pampered personality that he had grown out of had probably come out because he met his hung for the first time in a while. But, maybe, open hollow corner bracket Jung-woo's eyes widened. Open hollow corner bracket possible. Really? Yeon-woo nodded. I'm not sure. There might be a way, or one could be created. Yeon-woo tapped at the bracelet and fetter on his wrists and ankles. Jung-woo's face stiffened. He had also heard of what the power Yeon-woo gained while he climbed the tower was. A being that he hadn't even been able to imagine while he repeated the benefit, uncovering secrets of the tower. Yeon-woo was talking about borrowing the Black King's authority. The only options left in the Black King's set is the pillory. And to get that, open hollow corner bracket you need Kaini, right? Yeah, open hollow corner bracket but Hades won't give it to you easily. Yeon-woo nodded. I need to distinguish myself in battle and receive it as a reward. Agaris stares at you and your brother. Shock fills Agaris' face. Agaris jumps around excitedly and screams. A message from Agaris has arrived. Message. It's come. Finally. Finally. You brothers. Now, accept. Agaris' messages have been blocked with the authority of other gods and demons. Open hollow corner bracket why is Agaris that bastard acting up like that from the morning? Ignore him. He's always like that. Agaris has released the block with his authority. A message has arrived from Agaris. Message. I have a. Messages from Agaris had been blocked for a while on the authority of other gods and demons. The gods and demons vote about Agaris' case. The unanimous results of the vote had removed Agaris of his ability to speak for a few days. Agaris jumps around, saying he is wronged. Vimalasitra is interested in what you'll do in Tartarus soon. Cernunnos blesses his spirit, who must be feeling tired from the rough environment of Tartarus. All gods of death watch you. All demons of death watch you. All gods of war hope you are victorious. All demons of death urge you for action. Open hollow corner bracket anyways. Jung-woo shook his head at Agaras, who was still greedy for him. It seemed like he had something to say to him, but it was probably going to be useless like usual. Open hollow corner bracket I've been feeling it faintly, but there's a ridiculous amount of them. Looking at the gazes around Yi and Woo, he shook his head. He had also received interest from multiple gods and demons and love calls from them as well, but he had never seen so many gods and demons with a player. Considering how players were desperate to receive the attention of a lower god or demon, he was speechless. The problem was it was the gods and demons who were desperate here. There were easily 3,000 of them after a rough estimate. Open hollow corner bracket just how many authorities do you have? Wait. He opened a window and checked the number of his authorities. 3,702. No, 3,703 3,704. Open hollow corner bracket. It seemed the number of his authorities were raising by the second. Yi and Woo seemed to be accepting them nonchalantly, but Jung-woo was sick of it. Open hollow corner bracket aren't you tired with all of them? It's tough. Thankfully, my body's holding up. But, open hollow corner bracket it'll be hard when you actually need to fight. Yi and Woo nodded. When there were about 900 channelings connected to him, he could endure it with his demonic divine dragon body. He was able to catch Astraeus thanks to it. But now, having 4 times as many authorities, it was hard to describe what more he was going through. The fact that the number of authorities didn't merely mean that he was connected to more channelings. He had the pressure of having to withstand more gazes, so it wasn't just 4 times as many gazes but way beyond that. If he didn't have the demonic divine dragon bod, or the level or his soul was lower, Yi and Woo's identity would have been crushed by the presence of the supernaturals already. He wouldn't be able to help much if he went to war like this. No, rather, he would be weaker than when he caught Astraeus, so he would be in danger. Open hollow corner bracket you won't be able to distinguish yourself like this. Yi and Woo nodded. He had already decided on participating in the war. Yi and Woo also wanted to resurrect Jung-woo. He didn't want to speak with him for a few minutes or hours each day, but drink the entire night with him, or walk next to him even though they would fight. He wanted to give Jung-woo the freedom of being able to walk around on his own. Most of all, he wanted to see his precious niece. Sesha smiled brightly, along with Ananta waking up and being together with Jung-woo. But to do that, he needed to take care of everything he had, making them completely his own. Open hollow corner bracket the hardware is excellent and the software is nice too. But there's too much of the good software that the functions are slowed down. Jung-woo clicked his tongue, accurately judging Yi and Woo's condition. The hardware of divine draconic body was outstanding. It was what Jung-woo had hoped for all this time. Its limits were so deep that even the tower couldn't calculate them. But there were too many programs and software. Open hollow corner bracket it does seem like you'll be able to calculate it with dragon's knowledge if you get used to it, but close hollow corner bracket. It's not easy. Open hollow corner bracket yeah. I can tell. Jung-woo scratched his head. Open hollow corner bracket and the skills from all the hidden pieces are just piled up in there. After learning aura, Yi and Woo had organized Heaven Wing mana control a bit, but he was still lacking. His other skills like draconic divine eyes and wind path far exceeded it. Open hollow corner bracket so that's why you need my sky wings. Yeah, exactly. Yi and Woo knew his body more detailedly than what Jung-woo knew, and he judged that there was only one solution to all of it. He needed something to manage everything. Something that would efficiently organize the softwares that all claimed they were the best into a system and automatically adjust the data calculations and processes. An operating system. In other words, he needed an automatic system that could efficiently manage all the authorites without him having to input consciousness and amplify the functions of his demonic divine dragon body. Thankfully, he didn't have to look far for one. Sky wings. If it was Jung-woo's signature skill that he had once experienced on the 21st floor, he thought it would be perfect to use as an operating system. Sky wings was originally a skill that heightened the limits of draconic blessings to tie them up with traits, authorities, and skills. And that wasn't all. It was the greatest buff skill. That was why its numbering was 002. Although it was pushed back to 003 because of fire wings, it was most definitely an outstanding skill. No, it didn't make sense that fire wings was compared to it in the first place. The purpose of attack skills and buff skills were different in the first place. It was funny to say that one was better than the other. Anyways, if Yi and Wu could have sky wings, no, an adjusted sky wings that fit his demonic divine dragon body, then he would really have proper wings. Yi and Wu didn't think it was impossible. Sky wings was a skill that Jungwoo made, and if he worked with him, he would be able to anu it. Something that was equal to wind path or fire wings would probably be the result. The other skills, authorities, and traits he had would improve as well. He would grow overall. It wouldn't be normal growth, but explosive growth. Open hollow corner bracket hung. What? Open hollow corner bracket is your conscience okay? Jungwoo looked exhaustedly at Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu already had 1 to 2 cheat skills, but he wasn't satisfied. His hung was still greedy as in the past. Of course I don't have one. Yi and Wu snorted, crossing his arms. I have to have all the good things. Open hollow corner bracket as expected, your temper. Jungwoo shook his head from side to side. Yes, his brother was several tiers above him. Chapter 365 Sky Wings 3. Team, HH, Yahiko, Thursdays, 7 temp. Open hollow corner bracket I suddenly had a thought. Quote? Yi and Wu looked at Jungwoo, waiting for him to speak. Open hollow corner bracket you're not planning on absorbing me or anything with Batori's vampiric sword to get sky wings, are you? Yi and Wu's eyes widened. Why didn't I think of that? Open hollow corner bracket. Jungwoo slowly took a step back. He was joking, but Yi and Wu seemed serious. Open hollow corner bracket there were 2 main foundations for creating sky wings. Perfect adaptability, and my link with Kalitas. Jungwoo began to explain how sky wings was made up. Yi and Wu's forehead wrinkled. Both of them are your specialities, though. Open hollow corner bracket yeah. This will probably be the greatest obstacle when making the skill. Perfect adaptability was the trait that allowed Jungwoo to grow so fast. The effect of being blessed by all mana and ability to use it freely allowed for his brilliance regarding magic to shine through. On top of that, his link with the ancient dragon Kalitas helped him to learn how to use magic power. If these two were properly used, it would only result in growth. Open hollow corner bracket the link heightens the potential of draconic blessings that one has, and perfect adaptability combines all kinds of skills and magic. So when the skill was activated, a variety of additional effects followed. Then I need to find something to replace these two. Yi and Wu thought deeply about his specialty skills. The first one that came to mind was cold-blooded. If it was the trait that helped him to be level-headed in any dangerous situation. There were times when the skill didn't work because he was too animated, but Yi and Wu had definitely benefited from the cold-blooded trait. In the beginning, he had gained immunity and resistance thanks to it, and the skill he used the most, time difference, came from it. When various powers, skills, spells, and buffs are activated, my body is bound to waver. My mind would also be a bit distracted at that time. As long as I can fix this. Although it wouldn't be as effective as perfect adaptability, which could harmonize various skills and powers, it should still have been able to play the part. If so, what would he use to replace the link with the ancient dragon Kalitas? Luckily, something quickly came to mind. The Philosopher's Stone. To be precise, it was a Philosopher's Stone that swallowed a Soul Stone. The purple energy that Yi and Wu got a glimpse of was so diverse that it seemed to have been created from various types of magic power. If he could make use of it, he would be able to embrace all of those powers and link them together. Yi and Wu talked about his idea. Open hollow corner bracket that might work. Jungwoo nodded, his eyes wide as his thoughts spun around in his head. Open hollow corner bracket then, the process of the skill would start with the effect of your specialty, followed by the factor activation, body awakening, making contact with the power, and controlling the effects. To be precise, the order was, start up right pointing arrow cold-blooded right pointing arrow Philosopher's Stone right pointing arrow activating the draconic, magic, and divine factors right pointing arrow maximizing the possibility right pointing arrow awakening the third stage of the dragon body right pointing arrow arming the spells right pointing arrow making contact with the power right pointing arrow controlling it right pointing arrow revealing the effect. Open hollow corner bracket it's so complicated. Jungwoo went over the process in his head before clicking his tongue lightly. The process was really complicated because there were many things Yi and Wu had to do. It hadn't been so complicated for him. Yi and Wu's was different in many ways. A particular concern was that the calculations required for every step would be incredibly complex and the amount of energy that would be consumed would be enormous. It was filled with inefficiencies. The problem was that none of these steps could be discarded. Open hollow corner bracket. First of all, I believe the most urgent priority would be to find several patterns and create algorithms to efficiently accomplish each step. That would take a lot of data. Open hollow corner bracket. The more samples and data collected, the better. From then on, Yi and Wu began focusing on collecting data on the operation of magic power. He sat in the lotus position and concentrated his thoughts on the Philosopher's Stone. Brr! The Philosopher's Stone trembled slightly. This stone, which had not changed at all despite swallowing a large amount of purple energy, began releasing its magic power as if it agreed with his idea. No, he wondered if it could even be called magic power now. Not only did it have the three blessings, draconic, magic and divine, but it also had the power of the soulstone, which was hard to express in words. Yi and Wu began to circulate the mana with Heaven Wing mana control while spinning 360 cores at the same time. However, something unexpected happened. It's so fast. Until now, even when Yi and Wu entered a new awakening stage of the dragon body, even when he continually accepted new factors or gained several powers, and even if it might have been too much of a burden for his body, he never thought that there would be a problem with the operation of magic power. Whenever his constitution changed, the Heaven Wing mana control would also have to be changed a bit in order to find the most efficient route. But it was different this time. When his constitution changed, it was like the hardware of a computer changed. Therefore, the software had to be adjusted to match it. However, the changes caused by the Philosopher's Stone, which was basically an engine, were different. It was like saying a sports car, which was already quite fast, had transformed into an aircraft. In other words, it was on a different level. Naturally, this made it difficult to control the power to continue following the existing routine. In fact, the speed at which the mana was moving was so fast that even his own demonic divine dragon body became difficult for Yi and Wu to control. At this rate, his body would collapse before a new pattern was found. First, I need to fix the Heaven Wing mana control. The operation of magic power was the most fundamental and essential part when it came to creating a pattern. If he was to try to continue from where it was now, everything would become a mess. Since a new vessel was needed to contain new contents anyway, he decided to think of this as a good thing. Fortunately, there were no major issues while restructuring the Heaven Wing mana control. Over time, he had gained a deeper understanding of internal forces. He climbed towards the ranks of the masters, his experiences accumulated through practice, the mysteries of the Monkey King that he gained after obtaining the Heaven Bracket, his knowledge of dragons added by absorbing the Summer Queen, and the understanding of the worldview that he gained by robbing Poseidon's factors. In addition, he was able to make use of the data from Jung Wu's countless privileges, as well as some knowledge from Vimalasitra connected to the sea god. There were so many sources he could refer to. The knowledge that Yi and Wu had was not small. Through events that even the Nine Kings couldn't accomplish, such as creating the Philosopher's Stone and Kaini, the insights and understandings he gained were fully incorporated into the martial arts. It wasn't too difficult to interpret and apply them in his own way. Time difference. There are many things to fix. That's what the system message said in the first place. In any case, he'd just have to make a few new arrangements. In fact, there were many parts that were forcibly removed. The limit to the amount that could be outputted at once had been increased by several times, and the pathways had been widened and strengthened so that they rotated smoothly. When necessary, the position of some musculature was partially changed. Crunch, crunch, like replacing old parts, he had no qualms about changing his body. Open hollow corner bracket. I think it would be better to strengthen this part a little more. The core here rotates abnormally quickly. I think it would be better to lower its output a bit and put a few things to perform cooling functions near it. Jung Wu used draconic eyes to inspect Yi and Wu's body before pointing out parts that needed to be changed or helped. Because of the connection between them, Yi and Wu could see exactly what he had in mind without him having to say anything, which smoothened the process considerably. In particular, since Jung Wu had more knowledge when it came to dealing with soul stones, enough to make the pocket watch, there was no doubt that it would be extremely helpful for Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket. Each of the 14 soul stones has a different name and property. So if you want to create something, you have to pay attention to that. Jung Wu got a very sharp awl, then he sat quietly beside Yi and Wu, who was still sitting in the lotus position, and began to stab him. If the awl was just pushed against Yi and Wu's rubber-like skin, there wouldn't even be a mark. So instead, Jung Wu used his spirit energy to push the awl. This caused a slight tear to appear in the skin from which blood started to spill. In that way, Yi and Wu's body gradually became covered in blood. Open hollow corner bracket. The characteristic of pride is its tendency to overwhelm everything. It tries to crush everything around it and push them down. The bloodstains slowly gathered and twisted until they gradually formed a tattoo. When this tattoo almost completely covered the right arm, a pattern suddenly appeared, emitting a strange light. These were the magic rune characters that had been engraved on Yi and Wu's bones for a long time. Open hollow corner bracket. But the ironic part is that it still prefers equality in the hierarchy, except for itself, since it forces its way above everything. Jung Woo combined the tattoos with these magic runes to draw an entirely new diagram. A magic square which had never been revealed to the public. This was something that he and the ancient dragon Kalitas had theorized about a long time ago, but they were never able to make it a reality. However, the moment he saw the magic rune characters on Yi and Wu's body, a flash of inspiration occurred, and he began to engrave on his body as if he was drunk. Open hollow corner bracket. So that you can treat them all equally, I'll play the role of assistant, so that Hung's magic power can flow more smoothly. Centered around the Philosopher's Stone, let the mana circuit, physical function, power, spells, skills, specialties, and even your thoughts rotate on equal footing. The magic square engravings on Yi and Wu's body gave off a shimmer of light as all of the parts connected before sinking back into his skin. And in response, a mana circuit was quickly reconstructed, centered around the Philosopher's Stone. The skill proficiency of Heaven Wing Mana Control has increased significantly after responding well to the mana circuit. Heaven Wing Mana Control, 71%, 72%, 73%, 91%. Mana circuit, 80%, 81%, 82%, 95%. Congratulations, you have succeeded in raising the proficiency of Heaven Wing Mana Control and Mana Circuit to the max. All stats related to these skills are improved. Strength increased by 20, agility increased by 30. You have gained enlightenment about your skills. The two skills have become connected and have combined to form a new skill. High rank skill, Mana Operator, has been created. The proficiency for the Mana Operator skill has increased significantly and has quickly reached the maximum value. Calculating players' stats to find new skills. Obtained the high-ranked skill, Chakra Mastery. The proficiency of the Chakra Mastery skill has increased significantly. The effect of the Buddha Art Magic Square has been applied. Some of the Transcendence obtained from the killing of a god is used to discover new skills. Ding! The high-ranked skill, Atman System, has been created. Atman System, numbering, measuring, proficiency, 0.0%. Description: breathing is the most basic act of life to survive, and it acts as the link between nature, both outside and inside. Flowing air constantly contains mana that guides to the universe and nature, and it enables one to be reborn as a transcendent being after exceeding certain limits. Samara operating. Based on mental strength and physical function, this rotates energy along the endocrine system. It operates freely along 6 large and 88,000 small clusters, and it causes certain physical and magical changes along the various connected nervous systems. Mukti read. This releases processed energy outside of the body that reveals amazing effects. There's no significant time difference between the mental command and the subsequent response, and the effect varies greatly depending on the type of energy and the level of the user's understanding. This skill is unique, meaning there is only one of its kind in the tower. If you successfully pass it on to others, the unique title will disappear, and instead, you will be given additional benefits as the creator. This skill is still incomplete. However, its potential is incredibly high, so completing it will give it a high rank or numbering. The Mana Circuit, which only the Dragon race had, and Heaven Wing Mana Control, which Yi and Wu invented, had combined to create the Mana Operator skill. Naturally, it was completely different from the system used in the tower. The Godly Society open angle bracket Asgard close angle bracket exclaims at your accomplishment. The Godly Society open angle bracket Church of Heaven close angle bracket is deeply interested in the mana control method you created. The malicious feelings felt by the Godly Society open angle bracket Diva close angle bracket begin to change favorably. The Demonic Society open angle bracket L'Infernal close angle bracket once again puts off their agenda to discuss you. Many gods are troubled. Many demons, who had only been slightly interested in you, have begun to consider you seriously. They do not hide their desire to make you their apostle. A few gods show their concerns about the use of the Soulstone, Stone of Pride. A few demons consider how to deal with you. Yin Wu immediately felt the perfect harmony between his body and his mana that had been working separately before. Since we've found the perfect mana control for my body, we now know which direction to look for the right data. Feeling the flow of mana in his body, Yin Wu awakened all of the dormant authorities. As the dragon body awakened, the powers within him became active. It was at that moment. Agni, a god from (diva shows interest in you. Bak, a demon from (Gia sect shows great interest in you. Current available authorities, 692. The number of authorities was steadily increasing. After the creation of the admin system, Yin Wu was able to obtain data at an extremely fast rate. He tested the 3 factors individually to see if there were any metabolic changes. Despite the physical changes that took place after the awakening of the dragon body, the admin system was able to gradually improve its function so that it could operate naturally without needing a cooldown period. There were some bad situations, such as operating the mana through a route that had never been used before, changing musculature, breaking a core, causing a backflow in his mana, or even reaching a point where he had to cut off his limbs. Whenever that happened, Yin Wu would just restore his body with regeneration without batting an eye. And Jung Wu recorded every single physical change. At that moment, they were so focused on their research that anyone who was watching them work would feel extremely tired. It would be almost impossible to find someone who would so readily use their own body as a test subject. He treated himself like a sample laying on a cold operation table. Thanks to these observations, Yin Wu was able to quickly grasp the secrets of his demonic divine dragon body. With Jung Wu's ideas added to the mix, the proficiency of the admin system rose rapidly. Now, his mana control had become so easy that he no longer needed to be envious of the perfect adaptability trait. After he believed he'd obtained all of the necessary data on his body, Yin Wu's mind, which had been completely focused on his body, began to turn to other directions. The gazes locked onto him had already reached 5,000. And authorities were constantly being added as a result of this. Fortunately, no matter how many channelings he had, his body would no longer be burdened by it. However, getting everything under control is an entirely different story. The Transcendents Beyond were fully aware of what Yin Wu was attempting to do. They were all curious as to how he would accomplish this task, and a few cynical ones didn't believe he could do it. It wouldn't be easy, but Yin Wu intended to swallow all of these authorities. Beneath the Sky Wings, Chapter 366 Sky Wings 4. Team, Yahiko, Thursdays, 7th temp. Open hollow corner bracket. Now that the computer's hardware is stable, all that's left is to build the OS. That's the most difficult part. Open hollow corner bracket. It's more than just difficult. Jung Wu clicked his tongue lightly. He knew all too well just how arrogant gods and demons were. They were so arrogant that they would never compromise or bend their wills, and they would only seek to further their own myths. How would they react when a mere mortal tried to control their power? Jung Wu didn't think they would be offended. But he was certain that they would think it was ridiculous, and many of them would even tell him to do it if he could while laughing in secret. Therefore, asking for their cooperation would never happen. Furthermore, considering that the main reason why the gods and demons gave Yin Wu their authorities was to make him their apostle. Rather, it would be a blessing if they didn't interfere. Jung Wu shook his head. He didn't think it would be easy. That was why he was even more curious as to how Yin Wu would overcome the biggest obstacle in the creation of the new Sky Wings. Open hollow corner bracket. Have you thought of a way? Roughly. Open hollow corner bracket. Oh. What is it? Maybe something similar to what you did. Jung Wu frowned at that. Open hollow corner bracket. Why would you want to do that? In any case, it was the same as in the past, where he would look at his opponents and steal the things he needed. He was simply doing the same thing to his younger brother, who said he'd help him. Yin Wu chuckled softly. It felt good, like back in the days when they would argue about everything. On the other hand, he couldn't help but wonder what it would be like if their mother could see them like this. Tell me first. I'll keep it in mind. Open hollow corner bracket. Ha. I think categorization should be your first priority. Currently, Yin Wu had over 5,000 authorities. And even at that moment, more were constantly being added. They might have heard rumors about him or arrived after learning he had slain a god. As a result, the authorities he had were very muddled. Authority was the medium that contained the divinity and mythology of the transcendent beings. Naturally, even if they were in the same godly society or had the same godly aspect, they were all independent because they were different internally. Therefore, Jung-woo felt that the most urgent task was to create several large frames that would become common denominators through which they could organize the authorities accordingly. I had the same idea. Then how will we make the common denominators? Yi and Woo nodded before asking another question. Jung-woo's answer was simple. Open hollow corner bracket. The wings are divided into left and right, aren't they? So we can use this as our standard. Gods on the left and demons on the right. Yi and Woo also felt it was a good idea. And then, we'll break them into smaller subcategories. Open hollow corner bracket. Yeah. We have to discuss how exactly to divide the categories. The easiest way would be to group them by society. Despite their individualistic tendencies, gods and demons were incredibly wary of wandering alone. Therefore, they created societies with those who shared the same mythos as them to work together and strengthen each other. Based on that, Jung-woo thought it would be much easier to control if he grouped the authorities of the gods and demons by their societies. If they did that, the conflicting authorities could be somewhat pacified. However, no, it sounds like a good plan, but it would be a bit, very dangerous. Yi and Woo thought about it before shaking his head. Jung-woo seemed a little upset because Yi and Woo was ignoring the plan he'd spent all night devising. He grumbled, pouting, open hollow corner bracket. Why? That would only lead to an imbalance in the factors. Jung-woo was about to grumble about what that was supposed to mean, but he stopped as he realized what it meant. Open hollow corner bracket. I didn't think about that. The ratio of gods to demons who were currently connected to Yi and Woo was 3:7. There were far more demons. This was because Yi and Woo was walking a path that was closer to the side of the demons. The fact that the alignment in his personal status window was close to evil also played a major role. In this situation, separating the sky wings in this way would only lead to imbalance. Of the three factors that Yi and Woo possessed, the magic factor would develop more. Open hollow corner bracket. Then, what about if we controlled the number of authorities? Wouldn't it be better if the ratio was 5:5? A few gods nod their heads, thinking that's a good idea. A few demons are furious at the implications. The demons who joined the channel belatedly feel anxious. The low-ranking demons glare at your brother. Agariz laughs and points his fingers at the offended demons. Jung-woo could feel the scorn in the gazes of the demons, but he blatantly ignored them. Yi and Woo shook his head once again. No, each transcendent being is different, so even if we rate them by power, their weights are bound to be different. Moreover, even if I try to solve the balance problem, it's very likely that my body would be damaged. If he divided the wings like Jung-woo suggested, his body would basically be divided into two parts, and there was a high chance that the godly factor on the left and magic factor on the right would develop even further. Then, the triangular balance that he had created in his body would be destroyed. Open hollow corner bracket. Damn it. This is too hard. Jung-woo scratched the back of his head. It was the first time he had ever encountered the demonic divine dragon body, so it was difficult for him to reach any conclusions because of how little data he had. Open hollow corner bracket. Then, what are you going to do? I'm thinking of setting keywords to divide the categories. Open hollow corner bracket. Keywords. Yeah, I'm thinking of separating the gods and demons who are interested in me in that way. Death on the left, and war on the right. The gods and demons of death had been showing keen interest in Yi and Woo as he was considered to be the Black King's successor. On the other hand, the gods and demons related to war showed favor because of the path Yi and Woo had been walking so far, in other words, his karma. It was a glimpse of their own myths. In other words, on the left would be the power of the Black King. And on the right, the wings would be created from his own karma. The gods of death are happy with your choice. The demons of death are interested in what you're trying to do. The gods of war are curious about your idea. The demons of war laugh at all the other gods and demons. Agariz looks a little confused. Agariz is attempting to deliver a message. The time limit hasn't ended, so the attempt has failed. Agariz is being a pain in the neck. Agariz's access has been restricted. Agariz's access has been restricted. Open hollow corner bracket. You're going to group the authorities into two categories. What about the ones that don't fit either of them? Will you throw them away? For example, there was the case of Hundan, a demon who had shown great interest in Yi and Woo from the start, even though he hadn't said much. Although he was notorious for the nickname, Four Evils, he was, in fact, not deeply related to either death or war. But what he'd just said was no different from saying he'd throw them all away. I'll add them in. Somehow. Open hollow corner bracket. How are you going to do that? Do you know what the root of a myth is? Open hollow corner bracket. I suddenly feel like I'll say something wrong again. It's struggle. Jungwoo made a strange expression. Struggle can be against oneself or fighting against the world. Or it could be against fate. Open hollow corner bracket. In that way, there certainly aren't many who could escape from death or war. It seemed that Jungwoo had finally understood what Yeonwoo meant. Open hollow corner bracket. To put it simply, you intend to stretch the frame for the authorities as wide as you can. Right, and after putting them in these larger categories, I can then separate them into smaller, more specific categories. Jungwoo clicked his tongue. Even though it sounded a bit far-fetched, it was theoretically the most efficient method. It would balance the gods and demons more evenly, and then, the mixed authorities would be put into large and small frames. Open hollow corner bracket. I wonder if the authorities will accept that. They will, somehow. Yeonwoo then finally looked at the notifications that were constantly in his face. Hundun is silent. Vimalasitra bursts into laughter, finding the idea interesting. Sir Nunos wonders where he will be classified and asks if there will be any other category keywords. Nergal crosses his arms and decides to take a closer look. Ares burst into laughter. If Agni doesn't like it, he will upturn everything. The responses in the messages were all over the place. The gods who were related to death or war generally liked the idea, but there were also a few who were displeased. Some even seemed to be trying to pressure Yeonwoo by strengthening the channeling. However, such reactions were already expected, so Yeonwoo just ignored them and continued. In fact, these keywords weren't things he could compromise over. Death was not something he could throw away while he had the Black Kings set. War was the most necessary factor for the karma he had built so far and would continue to build. To one day transform my karma into a myth I can't give up. Yeonwoo was targeting the upper floors, and he had no intention of stopping after taking his revenge. He would climb higher, farther. To do that, he had to prepare one by one, then progress step by step. Open hollow corner bracket. Hung, by chance. Realizing what Yeonwoo was thinking, Jungwoo's eyes widened in surprise. Yeonwoo lifted his finger to his lips, gesturing for him to be quiet, and Jungwoo nodded heavily before closing his mouth. On the other hand, he didn't need to say it aloud. Because he knew that the sky wings, which would be added to his demonic divine dragon body, were actually just the beginning. Jungwoo decided to concentrate even more. Hung probably made a decision like that because of me. He felt his shoulders become heavy. As each of the wings had different keywords, they would naturally be produced separately. The first one they started making was the left. For the left wing, the category word was death. Making the left wing was actually much easier than expected. Jungwoo used the same process and routine he used when the first pair of sky wings was created. They just reworked it a bit to fit the admin system in addition to adding the Black King's authority. Although I don't know who the Black King is yet, the gods and demons of death are following the Black King to the end. Then, what if he used the Black King's authority to subdue the other authorities? This allowed him to control them with more ease. Based on that, Yeonwoo designated the condition to activate the left wing as the frame of the Black King, and he set the first command to the authority, Soul Harvester. Creation of skill Sky Wings left has begun. The option of the Black King's frame set, Soul Harvester, has been specified as the first command. The category, Death, has been successfully associated with the first command. The authorities within the category, Death, begin to be affected by the first command. Taesanbu looks at you with an angry expression. Nergal shakes his head with a cheery expression. For the first time, Saitagarba has a troubled expression on his face. Izanami says you can't defy her. Halpas sighs with an irritated expression. He has no choice but to follow your will. Esma Diva declares that she will pursue death. Hell's face becomes red. All the gods of death declare. Message. With your malicious desires, an attempt to recklessly cut and gather their power in one place is impudent. All the demons of death declare as one. Message. If you can build a solid foundation and bring back his power, anything is possible. Message. However, if you dare to defile his reputation, death will devour you. Message. You'll have to keep that in mind forever. When all the declaration notifications were over. Click, click, Yeonwoo felt 444 channelings surrounding him suddenly coalesce into one. To be precise, it was as if strands of twine had been twisted into a rope and the smaller channels had combined to form one large body. Cloud, server, Wasn't it okay to describe it in this way? Yi Yanwu had that thought for a short moment. But the name didn't matter, so he focused on the left wing once again. In his hand, 444 black feathers suddenly appeared. Chapter 367 Sky Wings 5. Team, HH, Yahiko, Thursdays, 7 temp. Open hollow corner bracket this time, it's wings. You are the strangest master I've met in my later years. You ask me to make all kinds of things. The Cyclops, Brontes, couldn't help but shake his head when he saw the 444 feathers that Yi Yanwu brought in. Recently, the three Cyclops brothers had been concentrating on repairing the weapons brought by Pluto or restoring the broken holy territory. Pluto hadn't had a stable supply for a long time, so the Cyclops brothers had many things to deal with. Fortunately, Yi Yanwu had a lot of goods, and he could always obtain more supplies through Atlan if needed. Pluto felt like they had finally encountered an oasis after trudging through a hot, dry desert. Thanks to him, little by little, smiles began to appear on the faces of the lieutenants and soldiers, which had only shown irritation and anxiety before. This was the first time in decades they were able to feel relaxed. And their trust in Yi Yanwu, who made it all possible, increased by the day. Even those who were dissatisfied with Yi Yanwu because he broke Hades's truce began to accept his actions, claiming he must have had a reason. In fact, there had been no movements from Titans or Giants yet, and the scouts that they sent out continuously reported nothing unusual. It was as if the armistice was still being upheld. Pluto was able to reorganize at a fast pace. However, contrary to their expectations, Yi Yanwu had not appeared in front of Pluto for over half a month. Everyone believed this was because he was being punished for violating the truce. The members were unable to ask for his release because the honor of their master, Hades, was at stake, so they could only shuffle their feet. Brontes, on the other hand, was aware that the true situation wasn't what it appeared to be and that Yi Yanwu was actually preparing something under the guise of imprisonment. Nevertheless, the feathers he'd brought with him were understandably surprising. Open hollow corner bracket. What the hell are these? He hadn't understood what he was talking about when he asked him to make wings. But when he inspected the feathers, he couldn't help but be surprised. Every feather was tremendously heavy. No, to be specific, they exuded spiritual pressure. For people with ordinary souls, just having these feathers near them would be enough for their souls to be swept away and torn apart by the sheer amount of pressure. A sinister, sticky void seemed to seep out of these black feathers. Brontes was able to tell what this thing was. Death. It was something he'd already experienced. It was filled with laws that no one who was bound by fate could resist. Death had various forms. It was sometimes depicted as a deadly disease, a peaceful sleep, or painful fatality. In fact, Hades himself wouldn't recklessly use this great power. Even Brontes, who had produced numerous items for the gods of Olympus, had never seen a divine item like this one. Fragments of transcendence. Those words seemed to fit. It was like cutting off the parts of the divinity of various individuals and throwing them together at random. If he were to process it, the new power of this divine item would depend on whether the user could digest it. How did he get this? It was too much. This is the structure of the wings. It'll be used for a skill, but I would still like its physical form to be equipable so I can use it as a weapon or a shield in an emergency. I would like it to have the buoyancy of a bird's wings so I can fly freely in the air. Yi Yanwu and Jungwoo had put their heads together for several days before they could complete this design. It was a blueprint of the left wing. The structure was quite detailed. The blueprint was so densely covered in the information about the parts, material, and magical items required for each component that just looking at it was enough to make one's eyes hurt. On the other hand, it was so detailed that anyone with some knowledge could easily picture its finished form. Brontes recreated the left wing in his head before he almost collapsed in agony. Open hollow corner bracket. So complicated. He couldn't help but feel that no item could compare to this one. The feathers alone were amazing, but the process to incorporate all of them into the left wing was incredibly complicated. If he was able to make it according to the design, it would surely be very practical. The wings, which were divided into 3 layers, were incredibly durable, so they would be like armor when wrapped around the body. The tips and edges of the wings were like sharp swords, so even if Yi Yanwu was forced into a battle on the ground, he would be able to sweep through almost any enemy. It had the usefulness of Jungwoo's sky wings with the added characteristics and advantages of the wings of fire. The power of fire, which could be spread along the wings, could be used as a trump card in case of an emergency. In addition, it could perform various functions since they supplemented the parts that Yian-Wu wanted to add. If he had only wanted the buff, he would not have insisted on something as cumbersome as a large pair of wings. Instead, Yian-Wu hoped that it would be his skill, armor, and an all-round weapon that he could use like a limb. It was for this reason that he showed it to Brontes. Open hollow corner bracket. You're trying to pick up the entire mulberry tree with this one. I don't think there is any divine item that can compare to this. Quote. How is that possible? Open hollow corner bracket. I'll have to try to know for sure. If you don't mind, can I give you a piece of advice? Brontes was an outstanding craftsman who had already created 3 divine items of his own. Therefore, his opinion was more than welcome. Please go ahead. Open hollow corner bracket. There are too many magic squares inscribed on this part of the shaft, so it would be inefficient when magic power is supplied. But if you spread them out like this and make them work like a cogwheel. While Yian-Wu was talking about the left wing with Brontes. Open hollow corner bracket. I can't believe it. Open hollow corner bracket. Long time no see, no, Nemesis. You look completely different. If I hadn't heard, I wouldn't have recognized you. Jung-Woo greeted Nemesis with a happy expression on his face. However, Nemesis was still confused, and his eyes were shaking non-stop. He had already seen Jung-Woo again through Yian-Wu's eyes. He never thought about seeing him in person. He was afraid. Afraid that he was only hallucinating. Or that he was maybe dreaming again. During the long period that he was wandering in the void, Nemesis dreamed constantly. He dreamed of the times he shared with Jung-Woo. Of them wrestling, rolling down stairs, and laughing together. He was always by Jung-Woo's side. And now, Jung-Woo, whom he had been missing dearly, had reappeared before him. Naturally, he couldn't help but be afraid. Afraid that he would reach out and Jung-Woo would disappear again. That he would end up being just a temporary illusion. He was certain that if that were to happen, his heart, which was being held together by sheer willpower, would collapse. However, open hollow corner bracket. You're still so quiet. Close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket. It's really you. Nemesis could see that the man in front of him was the real Jung-Woo. But contrary to his expectations, his heart didn't feel like it would explode now that he was looking at him in person. Nemesis was also much calmer than usual. This didn't mean that his happiness had disappeared. It was just like meeting a friend who you hadn't seen in a long time. It was great to see them, but it wasn't a big deal. You could greet them naturally. Jung-Woo hugged Nemesis and stroked his human torso-sized head for a while. Open hollow corner bracket. But tell me something. What happened to you? I heard that Kalitas sent you into the void. Jung-Woo asked a question that had been floating around in his head for a long time. No matter how hard he thought about it, he couldn't figure out how Kalitas was still alive. He had definitely seen him return to Mana's embrace after giving his lair and dragon heart to Nemesis. He'd wondered if he left a thought body, but it wasn't that either. If that was the case, he definitely would have noticed after Kalitas returned to Mana's embrace. However, it was the ancient dragon Kalitas who had sent Nemesis to the void and told him to wait. Yian-Wu had also said that he'd heard Kalitas's voice when he first awakened his dragon body. He even told him that he would be waiting at the dragon temple. This meant something was going on. Something he didn't know about. Open hollow corner bracket. What the hell is going on? Open hollow corner bracket. Master, and I think it's Kalitas who sent you, the old master, back to Earth with the pocket watch. Open hollow corner bracket. Me and the pocket watch. Jung-Woo suddenly stood to his feet without realizing it. Open hollow corner bracket. That's why I'm curious. Nemesis's gaze deepened. Open hollow corner bracket. Old master, how did you know that pocket watch would be completely hidden? This is something that I always wondered. You had such confidence that you didn't even leave a written diary. Open hollow corner bracket. Jung-Woo didn't say anything. No, he couldn't. It was as if his brain had stopped functioning and he could no longer think deeply. As if something was blocking his current train of thought. Nemesis's eyes widened as he realized something from Jung-Woo's reaction. Open hollow corner bracket. You. Then, open hollow corner bracket. Never speak of this, Nemesis. Brahm's urgent voice sounded in Nemesis's head. His voice was filled with bitterness. Open hollow corner bracket. Not a word. Nemesis seemed to realize what was happening as he, too, fell silent. Why do you look like that? Yian-Wu tilted his head slightly as he looked at Jung-Woo's stiff face. Open hollow corner bracket. Hung. Quote. Open hollow corner bracket. No. It's nothing. Jung-Woo shook his head with a bitter smile. Yi and Wu wondered what was going on, but Jungwoo changed the subject before he could ask any more questions. Open hollow corner bracket. What about the left wing? Is it finished? The basic parts are finished. Yi and Wu had Bu engrave an enchanted tattoo on his back. The Black King's frame is in operation. The first order, Soul Collector, was activated. Successfully linked to Soul Collection. The soul moves. Magic power has been granted. Aura has activated. Notifications followed one after another. A complex seal that had been drawn on Yi and Wu's back began to glow. The glow was so bright that the seal was clearly visible even through his clothes. Then, skill, Sky Wings temporary, left activated. Waak. Following a loud sound, a three-pronged wing covered in black flames appeared. The black flames on this wing were so hot that even the surrounding air began to boil. Each of the flames was transformed from the aura that was compressing the waves of fire to the limit. This black aura, magic power, and the purple energy were compressed to the extreme. This aura, which could only be used with Vigrid before, now hung on his back with the Sky Wing as the medium. Open hollow corner bracket. You're really crazy. Jungwoo simply watched all of this with an exhausted expression. Considering the destructive power of these flames, Yi and Wu was like a suicide bomber who was carrying hundreds or even thousands of bombs. But Yi and Wu didn't seem to be worried about that. At first, he did think about the fact that he could explode and completely destroy his surroundings. But fortunately, it became a lot more stable thanks to the processing done by the three Cyclops brothers as well as the technical calculations of Brahm and Bu. Therefore, he did not need to worry about exploding at all. The only disadvantage was that it consumed a lot of magic power. But my magic power is overflowing. Yi and Wu used the admin system to connect a circuit from the Philosopher's Stone to the left wing. With the mana from the Soul Stone, he didn't have to worry about the flames on the wing going out even if he left it active for an entire year. Instead, it's my body that won't be able to handle the strain and collapse before that happens. Yi and Wu clicked his tongue slightly before activating the second order that had been engraved on the left wing. Far away, a channel to the sky, no, a server was opened. 666 authorities have been activated one after the other. Based on the wings of black fire, 222 additional feathers were added to the original 444, giving off a red glow. Following Yi and Wu's order, numerous magic squares appeared in the wide space. It was quite spectacular to see 666 authorities displaying various effects. All the gods of death nod happily. All the demons of death sigh in relief, saying that you haven't tarnished his reputation. Many gods are filled with astonishment. Many demons stare at you with stiff expressions. An anonymous god 1, Olympus looks at you with a calm gaze. An anonymous god 2, Olympus is afraid. Vimalasitra, who is very pleased by your performance, applauds in admiration. Vimalasitra looks forward to meeting you someday. Agaras snorts scornfully, asking if it's unnatural. Jungwoo inspected the left wing with draconic eyes. He was checking to ensure there weren't any problems during the skill process, any confusion during the channeling, or if there were any problems with energy efficiency. It might not have been necessary then, but it was done in order to prevent possible problems in the future. Fortunately, he didn't notice any significant issues. All that was left were the small parts that they would slowly add in the future. Open hollow corner bracket. I can't find any problems for now. The Black King, it seems that Uncle might have been a fraud. I guess so. Yi and Wu nodded quietly. In truth, if he didn't have the power of the Black King as the core, it would not have been possible to complete the left wing so easily. The gods and demons of death were also much more cooperative than he'd expected. Was it because he could strengthen the Black King's authority? Or did they think it was a good opportunity to test the younger generation? Whatever their goal was, it was a good result for Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket. You can add more authorities to the left wing as you organize them properly. So now, all that's left is the right wing. The right wing didn't have a key component to tie it together like the Black King. So Jungwoo was curious as to what Yi and Wu would use as the core for his right wing. Yi and Wu definitely had something planned. But Jungwoo was annoyed because when he asked, Yi and Wu simply smiled without giving him an answer. So he was about to ask again. Kane, we're in trouble. Suddenly, someone opened the door and burst into the room. Yi and Wu put on his mask, and Jungwoo quietly entered the pocket watch. What is it? It was Doyle who opened the door. Huck. He was panting heavily, and his face was filled with urgency. Do you know Ether? Under his mask, Yi and Wu's face stiffened. He glanced down at the pocket watch in his hand for a brief moment. The watch's second hand was frozen. Those guys, what about them? Doyle answered Yi and Wu's question with a stiff face. They're looking for you, Hung. Chapter 368 Sky Wings 6. Team, HH, Yahiko, Thursdays, 7 temp. If this isn't your handiwork, who the hell did it? I told you, it's not us. It's some other guy's trick. Who else here could do that besides you? That's enough of your whining. Bring Cain or whatever his name is to me. Agora, the center of the holy territory where Hades' subordinates came and went busily. There, Ether and Khan were glowering at each other. The faces of Victoria, Galliard, and Kreutz, who were standing behind them, were also stiff. As the two spoke to each other, their voices steadily became louder and their auras became fiercer, as though they would draw their swords at any moment. As time went by, more and more people gathered around them. But no one actively tried to restrain these two. The atmosphere naturally became worse. In fact, even the spectators began separating into different groups. Paneth's party had long gained the trust of Dis Pluto after making significant contributions. Ether's favorability in the army was quite high. But the same was true for Yi and Wu and his party. They filled up the supply shortage and repaired the soldiers' armors for free. In particular, when it was rumored that they had helped Hades in the creation of his new item, Kaini, many people looked at them more warmly. Since it was a clash between these two groups, it was natural that Dis Pluto would pay attention to it. That was why. What the hell is all this fuss about? Dis Pluto's 13th Corps commander, Chanel, brought a large number of soldiers to help mediate between them. Originally, he would have just ignored this situation by saying it was an incident between players who weren't worth anything. However, Yi and Wu and Paneth were important allies, without whom Dis Pluto would not have been able to kill gods easily. Therefore, it was difficult for him to side with either. For now, all he could do was to listen to both sides as much as possible. He wondered what the hell had happened since they had no knowledge about any problems between the two sides. First of all, he needed to understand the overall situation so that they could either solve the problem or know which side to choose. However, the 13th Corps commander doesn't need to worry about this. Ether snorted and refused to explain, as if it didn't concern him. At that moment, Chanel's expression hardened. It was only at that moment that Ether realized he'd made a mistake. This was the 13th Corps of Hades' army, after all. He was like one of Hades' limbs. On top of that, he also possessed divinity. This meant that Chanel, who was basically a de facto member of the Forsaken Gods, was not someone he could disrespect. But, a god of open-angle bracket Olympus close-angle bracket, Poseidon, looks at you with interest. Hestia is looking at you. Demeter is looking at you. Hera is looking at you. Feeling the eyes settle on his body, Ether felt as though his heart had shriveled up in his chest. Damn it, right, this could be in my favor, too. Now that it's reached this point, I just need to do the best I can. It's just the Olympians, there's nothing to be afraid of. The Protogonoi species had new blood, but that was it. In fact, it was much easier for him to ridicule from the Transcendents because he had fallen far from his position in the old days. Even when he had been a member of Arthea, Ether never received a lot of attention. That was the reason he'd tried to join the Devil Army. In the end, he wasn't able to attract the heavenly demon's attention, so he ended up having to turn to Paneth. And now, he'd managed to grab the attention of several gods which he so longed for while acting like a puppet in a show rather than of his own free will. Ether couldn't help but feel incredibly miserable at that moment. He felt like just sitting down and crying right then. Everything sucked. He felt sad that he could only be manipulated and used without anything going as he wanted. For a moment, he felt it would be better to just commit suicide than live such a miserable life. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the courage to do that. Dogs just bark like dogs. And they do as they are told. As Paneth said, he was just a dog. A dog that barked when it was told to bark and wagged its tail when it was told to wag it. An oracle came during the night. Limit Cain's influence that spreading in Dis Pluto to a minimum. And if the chance appears, kill him without hesitation. Regardless of what Cain was up to, Ether didn't think it had anything to do with him. Even though they had met a few times before, he didn't have any particular quarrel with him. There were rumors that he was a new rising star, but Ether was never interested in stuff like that. However, he knew it very well now. The main reason behind Poseidon and the others' oracle. He's an enemy who needs to be punished immediately. Perhaps the only way to describe him would be, the evil in the dark. However, he and his party are obscuring Pluto's wisdom with their sweet words and actions. We have to stop this first. So Paneth decided to remove Yi and Wu and his party's influence from the equation before dealing with them directly. However, in order to do that, it was necessary to get a proper understanding of Yi and Wu's party. What their personalities were like. How powerful they were. Very composed. So you will confront them. Ether was chosen to be the bait. And the eyes of 4 gods were firmly fixed upon this bait, observing how he behaved and how he thought. In particular, Poseidon's eyes were filled with ridicule. Contempt for the descendant of an old god who couldn't even regain his former glory so long after his fall. You should still explain what happened so that we can sort out your quarrel. Although he was annoyed, Chanel forcefully calmed himself and tried to speak nicely. However, his voice was laced with anger. As though he would kill him without hesitation if he dared to act so rudely again. Only then did Ether get to the point. Khan seemed to have a lot he wanted to say, but Ether didn't give him the chance to intervene. Ha, look, it's this. A broken spear. Why are you showing me this? Would you believe me if I told you this was a perfectly fine spear just 2 days ago? And that this was also the holy spear that Paneth used to cut Megara's ankles? Chanel's eyes widened at that. Following the death of the Titan Astraeus, Megara's death had been a big boost for Pluto. Was this really the spear that helped with that? At that time, there was a problem with the spear's durability, so I wondered how to repair it. When I returned to the Holy Territory, I coincidentally heard that Cain and his party were doing repairs. Since he's an ally and a fellow player, I thought he could be trusted, so I had him repair it. And this is how it came back. Is that it? No. When I received it, I was sure that it had been repaired. Chanel frowned as he understood what Ether was trying to say. Ether quickly continued before Chanel could reply. But it was just fine on the surface. I got the spear back, and while I was using it to practice this morning, it suddenly shattered easily. Chanel frowned. What if he had taken this spear and gone into battle without checking it? It was almost certain that an accident would have occurred. Ether acted desperately as though he'd been wronged. I wondered if I'd made a mistake, so I checked the weapons and armors of the other people. But I was able to confirm that there were no problems with the items other than mine. Quote, and even though my spear had been damaged in battle, it would not be broken so easily. Who would be able to stand still in a situation like this? Ether threw the spear in his hand to the ground. That is why I'm arguing like this. But the party leader won't even show himself, and his teammates are simply repeating that they're innocent, like parrots. A ripple swept through the crowd. Whether it was because of Ether's earnest expression or another reason, the soldiers all watched on with firm expressions. From what he'd said, it appeared that the other group had the intention to get rid of their rivals, the Paneth team. That's not true. Khan tried desperately to explain that it wasn't them. But the atmosphere was already set in the opponent's favor. Realizing that his acting had worked well, Ether forcibly squeezed his twitching lips together. Poseidon mockingly admires your excellent acting. He didn't need to know that. Chanel rubbed his forehead as he felt a headache incoming. He realized that this issue was much more complicated than he expected. In recent years, the influence the players had on Pluto had increased significantly, resulting in this strange situation. Wherever players gathered, there would soon be different groups and factions. It was his job to prevent any major issues from happening. But this time, there was no way for him to handle this situation. Both sides had made so many contributions that they had already exceeded the level that he could easily restrain. In fact, just from looking at their performances, it was unclear whether he'd be able to fight either Yi and Wu or Paneth. He was not confident that he could defeat Lam, Hades' apostle. What should I do? They couldn't let Yi and Wu and Paneth go head-to-head as they wished. In the face of the breakdown of the agreement when the Titans and Giants might attack at any moment, they couldn't afford to lose either. Where the hell did Lam go? In this situation, it would be much better if the person who was in charge of the player core came over to deal with this. Recently, she'd been busy running around under Hades' orders, and she didn't have the time to intervene. Without a proper explanation, we can only use force. Following Ether's solemn words, Cha-chang, all the party members drew their weapons, and it seemed they were ready to leap at Khan's party at any moment. Khan and the others' expressions became hard when they saw this. They didn't think they would reach the point of drawing blood, even if they were to have a war of words. Victoria, Kreutz, and Galliard also put their hands on their weapons. But Khan stretched out his hand to stop them. Then he shook his head at them. Yi and Wu was their leader. Without his permission, they couldn't draw their weapons easily. Wah! Then, he released the momentum he had been hiding all this while. Immediately, the thick scent of blood seemed to fill the air as his sharp aura stung their skin. Surprised, Ether and the rest took a step back reflexively. Who was this guy? Ether's eyes twitched slightly. This was because he didn't expect this son of the Iron Lion, who was only a puppet of the Devil Army, to be so powerful. He didn't think there would be such a large gap between them. You'd better sheathe your blades. I actually hate the smell of blood and iron. Khan stared at Ether as he growled out those words. But Ether couldn't just turn back as he wished. Instead, he spread his arms wide while the corner of his lips twisted. His arms flashed before being covered in light. Open angle bracket, white light, close angle bracket. His signature skill activated. So what if you don't like it? I'm sorry, did you think I'd back down? As the tension reached its peak, the atmosphere around the Dis-Pluto soldiers degraded. Watching the two sides, Channel couldn't help but frown. To take out a weapon in front of a commander like him was the same as ignoring him in Dis-Pluto. Just as he was about to shout, clang, a heavy sound rang out suddenly, and Ether, who had been hit by something, flew back violently, bouncing on the ground a few times. He rolled a few times on the group before he came to a stop. Khan and the others stared with wide eyes. Kek. Ether coughed up blood as he tried to get up. The attack had been so sudden that he didn't even have the chance to see what happened. He wanted to see just who dared to do something like this. However, a kick to the back of the head forced his face into the ground once again. How dare you pull out your weapons in Lord Hades' territory without receiving his permission? You guys are crazy. You're really crazy. Lamb growled out as she stomped on Ether's head a few times, making it impossible for him to get up. Her sharp voice was like a clap of thunder in the ears of everyone nearby. Without hesitation, she swung her spear and cut off Ether's right hand, which was still glowing white, before turning her eyes to the rest of Paneth's team. They couldn't even pay attention to Ether's screams as they retreated nervously. Unfortunately, the fact remained that they had drawn their weapons. Schwack! Lamb drew a horizontal line with her spear that was glowing with black light. Immediately afterward, their right hands were also cut off, causing a shower of blood to squirt out. Kuek! Ak! She was truly unrelenting. Even though they were valuable allies who had helped their troops numerous times, she didn't care. There was only one thing that mattered to Lamb, and that was Hades's prestige. She would not forgive anyone who disregarded that, even if they were soldiers in the same army. To take out a weapon in the holy territory was to insult the god it belonged to. Naturally, she would be extremely angry. What was more shocking was the fact that although the main force, Paneth, was missing, she had still disabled this powerful party with one spear without them being able to put up a fight. What about you guys? What are you doing? Do you plan to pull out your weapons, too? Lamb's eyes turned to Khan and the others, who were still in shock. At that moment, the three standing behind Khan could only nervously look at each other. Then they quickly pulled their hands away from their weapons. How could such a small body contain so much power? Khan could feel that his collar was soaked in cold sweat. Open hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu, who had rushed over urgently with Doyle, couldn't help but look at the scene before him blankly. Ether, the cause of the situation, was currently lying with his head buried in the ground. He hadn't expected him to be in Tartarus and intended to cut off his head anyway. But he had unexpectedly come to bother him first. In the pocket watch, Jungwoo was also quiet. He must have had a lot of thoughts on his mind after seeing Ether for the first time in so long. Yi and Wu patted the watch gently while murmuring, "Don't worry too much. Open hollow corner bracket, because I'll definitely make sure to slit his throat." Chapter 369 Sky Wings 7. The Protogonoi kid had an accident. Hades chuckled slightly as he held his chin in one hand. Of course, this wasn't a happy smile. Instead, it was one of cynical amusement. Lamb, who was making the report, bowed her head. "Are you going to leave them be?" Hades laughed once again. This time, it wasn't cynicism. He was laughing because he truly found it amusing. What if I don't let them be? Over the past few years, they've traveled not only in the Holy Territory but also throughout Tartarus. Doesn't Olympus already know our whole situation by now? Everyone above the rank of lieutenant in Dis-Pluto knew that Paneth and her party were under the protection of Poseidon and the others. Who knew how much information Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, Hera, and the others had gained after their eyes and ears explored the entirety of Tartarus? Panath and the others sustained the flimsy excuse that they were helping in the war. However, it was definitely a problem for Poseidon to break the agreement between the three brothers not to interfere with each other's territories. And he was doing it in such a rude manner by having his subordinates travel around Tartarus without permission. In addition, Hades had been keeping a tight control over Tartarus for the past hundreds of years without spilling any information about what happened there. He hadn't even been in contact with Persephone. However, recently, it seemed that Hades was no longer paying attention to controlling the flow of information. Even though Hades grew more cynical as the war continued, it would certainly be upsetting for her, considering the fact that he had somehow kept everything under control for such a long time. In Lamb's eyes, Hades had progressed past cynicism and was now pessimistic. He was a responsible person, so he wouldn't let go of his blade till the end, but it was clear that his shoulders were slowly sinking. When did this start? Right, since then, when Yin Wu and his companions brought Persephone's message. Hades, who had always had a firm resolve, was shaken for the first time. At first, she thought he'd simply changed his mind since he received a message from his spouse after a long time. Looking back, it seemed that that wasn't the case. It was because Hades remembered that he'd intentionally avoided Persephone. At that time, Hades had no choice but to control the flow of information. And because of that, he didn't create a point of contact with Persephone. Within Olympus, no, the whole 98th floor, there was no one who didn't know the passionate love and compassion that Hades had for Persephone. There were even rumors that Hera would rip into Zeus, who often messed around with this woman or another, by comparing him to Hades. The fact that Hades was avoiding Persephone meant that something was definitely going on. But instead of looking happy upon receiving Persephone's message, he appeared subdued. Lamb couldn't help but wonder if something had happened between the couple. It was the same now. Hades didn't show any reaction despite hearing about the dispute between the players. Just a few months ago, he would have definitely punished them for disturbing the order in the army. Now, it seemed he wasn't even motivated enough to do so. The war against the Titans and Giants has already reached its peak. At this time, it's impossible to stubbornly try to block outside interference. So don't pay attention to that anymore. Sooner or later, Olympus will get their response. Quote. But it's true that disputes between the players will have a bad effect on the army's morale. Just handle it as you've always done. Lamb bit down hard on her lower lip. Hades was once again expressing his intention to abstain. Fortunately, his trust in his subordinates remained strong, so he left the work to them without hesitation. Then, as your apostle and lieutenant, may I ask you a favor? Say it. In addition to control over the players, I'd like you to give me command of 3 troops. The corner of Hades's lip curled up. Interest seemed to appear in his tired eyes. Do you intend to fight a battle? As per your command, I've been paying close attention to the surroundings of the Myeonbu-jaeon and Jikyeon-jaeon for the past few days. And I was able to confirm that the alertness of the troops stationed there is very lax. Myeonbu-jaeon and Jikyeon-jaeon were Hades's former holy territories. Along with the Temple of the King of the Underworld, they were 2 of the 13 temples which illuminated Tartarus and subdued the Titans and Giants. But now, they had been taken away by Typhon's attack. Following Hades's orders, Lamb had traveled quietly to these 2 old sanctuaries without informing anyone. Then, she realized one thing. They can be recovered quickly. No matter how fierce the offensive of the Titans and Giants was, it was incredibly difficult for them to project their influence to the Myeonbu-jaeon and Jikyeon-jaeon, which were very far from their home base. Moreover, there was still a lot of Hades's divine power in both locations. That wasn't all. Recently, most of the Titans and Giants' troops had been gathered on the side of the Colossus's bead, in order to attack the Great King's temple. It was clear that a lot of troops had already been withdrawn from Myeonbu-jaeon and Jikyeon-jaeon as if they had already abandoned them. Naturally, Lamb couldn't help but feel a little greedy. Since the enemy's vigilance was as low as it was now, it would be a great opportunity to recover the 2 lost holy territories. I also received a report from the Cyclops Argus that it is possible to restore the torch. So this is the best time to recover the holy territories. The torch, to be specific, it was referring to the holy fire. They were flames that were created in the void during the explosion that first created the universe. The flames soon became light and blended with the void, creating various worlds and dimensions one after the other. Gods then arose from the remnants of these flames. Naturally, they tried to protect the radical holy fire. In fact, the clan that could receive this holy fire gained an enormous amount of authority over the universe. This holy fire was the initial reason behind the struggle for leadership between Oranos and Kronos and then to Zeus. In the past, Lucille tried to devour this holy fire arbitrarily, but he fell due to the resentment of the gods and demons. However, after Zeus fell asleep, the holy fire's power weakened for some unknown reason, causing a sense of crisis to ripple throughout Olympus. It was around this time that the holy fire, which Hades had been using to subdue the titans and giants, extinguished. In fact, it was for this reason that Typhon was able to take over Kronos' forces. But the youngest Cyclops had reported to Lamb directly. It was possible to rekindle the flames. Until now, he had been stomping his feet because he had no way to extract the flames, which was the raw material for the holy fire's soulstone, but now that the other brothers had returned, the method had been recovered. If they could put the torches back on the darkened holy territories that had been occupied by the titans and giants, the holy territories would regain their functions, and the divine power that Hades lost would be restored. Then, his subordinates, Dis Pluto, would gain another power boost. The strength of the subordinates varied according to the strength of their master, and the strength of the powers they possessed varied greatly. So, please allow it. I will bring the troops back to the holy territory. The players need the merit, and Poseidon and the others have a reason to help Tartarus, so they wouldn't refuse. Even though Kronos' body separates the two places. Lamb recalled Kronos' body, which was large enough to divide Tartarus in two, before nodding heavily. I'll do it. It had already been a long time since Yi and Wu had broken the agreement even before it was properly invoked. So even if another battle was to take place, there would be no problem. Hades suddenly wondered if he should send out the troops who had just begun to arrange themselves for battle. She's not like me, but seeing Lamb's burning gaze, he couldn't refuse. Unlike him, who had lost his motivation, his subordinates were still facing forward with hope. He could not extinguish that fire with his own hands. Do what you want, and just like that, the order to go into battle had been given. Hades's orders had been passed down in secret. According to Lamb, who proposed this campaign, this plan could never be leaked. A blitzkrieg had been planned without even the troops' knowledge. Therefore the 10th, 11th, and 12th Corps, who would be participating in the operation, were still waiting in their respective barracks following the emergency standby order. The 13th Corps, which had gathered the players separately, had also stopped what they were doing and gathered in their barracks. As Yi and Wu had yet to complete the sky wings, he wanted to remain in the underground prison as long as possible. It can't since there's no other way to get Kaini. Yi and Wu, who needed to complete the frame for the Black King set, had to participate. It wasn't just that, the same goes for Elohim. Although they were in the same troop, Yi and Wu still clicked his tongue lightly when he saw the barracks being divided into two. Familiar faces could be found in his section. It was Ether and Elohim's party, whose hands had been chopped off by Lamb. They were staring in his direction with glowing eyes. Although Lamb was the one who beat them, they seemed to think it was Yi and Wu's party's fault. Fortunately or unfortunately, one of them was a professional healer, so they were able to reattach their severed right hands. Their expressions weren't good, but they were able to hold themselves back this time. In fact, if it hadn't been for Lamb's occasional glance over as she came in and out of the barracks, they might have tried to stir trouble again. Of course, Yi and Wu's party was either ignoring them or openly laughing at them, not caring whether they were being targeted. The night after the incident with Paneth's party, they'd explained themselves, and several people had sided with them. Moreover, Yi and Wu was now with them after leaving the prison, so there was no longer a need for them to endure any resentment. Yi and Wu had already given them permission to slit their throats without hesitation if they tried to start a fight again. So they weren't sure if this was good or bad. There wasn't any significant hostility in the 13th Corps so far. Naturally, factions were divided according to their relationships and interests, but it was clear that they valued their identity as members of Dis Pluto above all else. Paneth and her teammates were aware of that, so they were no longer making trouble. Of course, Yi and Wu knew that wouldn't last for long. They're looking for an opportunity. Yi and Wu chuckled when he saw Paneth and Ether looking at them with a calm gaze. He was sure they didn't think they would get caught. Because I know Poseidon is looking at me. Hermes points out that a god won, Olympus who hasn't disclosed their name is looking at you. Ares laughs and points out that a god too, Olympus who hasn't disclosed their name is looking at you. The gods and demons who were connected by the channelings told him that others were looking at him, and he'd be a fool to not know who they were. Of course, because of the rules, they couldn't give any names outright. But they could bypass this by giving subtle hints. Moreover, even without their tattling, he would be able to tell. Yi and Wu had more channelings than any of the other players. No, he had far surpassed them to the point where he had to make a cloud server. Naturally, it wasn't a problem to peek at some of the channelings that other players had. In such a situation, Poseidon had led more gods to come to him. And he even encouraged a quarrel. It was impossible for him to miss what that meant. Yi and Wu didn't think it was too bad. It was possible for him to complete the right wing while on the move. Rather, he wanted to find the right place to use the completed sky wings, but now, the stage was set. Furthermore, in this unthinkable situation, it seemed he had received a windfall. Ether was his younger brother's problem, he had something else to deal with. Thank you for the meal. Yi and Wu smiled lightly at the thought of Poseidon, who was kindly giving him a lot of his daily god blessing. Chapter 370 Sky Wings 8. Team, HH, Yahiko, Thursdays, 7 Temp. Some of you may not know each other yet, so let's start with some brief introductions. Under Lamb's leadership, the players of the 13th troop lightly greeted each other. Hello, my name is Pam, I'm a swordsman, Turdak, lancer. Say, I'm an archer, I also double as a scout. Technically, the 13th Corps had too few people to be called a corps. They typically attack the upper floors but had come here for training. However, each of them was strong. Most were well known even on the upper floors. Their skills had been verified since they had passed the 10 gates, and their abilities continued to grow as they fought against divine beings. Yi and Wu checked their skills with his divine draconic eyes while listening to their names. He only revealed as much of his powers as he needed to. Paneth, the Elohim party's leader, only revealed her name. Everybody here knew who she was. She's the one who successfully assassinated a god. She was said to have caught Megara. Achieving the assassination of a god meant that not only did she have talent, but she also had skills that transcended beyond the norm. Did Poseidon or another god descend? Or did they give her a similar power? Yi and Wu wondered what kind of hidden cards Paneth had. Poseidon and others clearly gave her some sort of blessing, but he had no clue what it was. It was hard to believe Paneth had killed a god with pure ability. Because of her, his event of slaying Astraeus was halved. Still, Yi and Wu thought that it would be hard for her and her party to wish for another fluke. At that moment, Paneth finished her introduction and looked in his direction. She seemed to be glaring at him, or perhaps she was telling him that it was his turn. Cain. Yi and Wu returned her gaze. Paneth narrowed her eyes. Is that your real name? Is that important? It's important. You're someone I have to entrust my back to from now on. I don't want to fight alongside someone who can't honorably state his real name. Cain, I have nothing else to add. If you can't trust me, I guess I'll drop out or something. The players' faces showed that they were taken aback. They were so close to their objective. It was absurd to say that he would suddenly withdraw. Kwang. Then, Lamb slammed the ground with the spear she was holding. She irritably looked back and forth between Yi and Wu and Paneth. Were you not warned that any unnecessary fighting between allies would lead to your throats being cut? Do you really want me to do that to you? Yi and Wu lightly shrugged, and Paneth took a step back and lowered her head. I'm sorry. Everyone listen up. It doesn't matter to me whether or not you guys get along. But don't ever cause trouble during a battle. Only focus on the present. After Lamb issued this final warning, she confirmed that all players lowered their heads and started her explanation. The place we need to secure is called Myeongbu-jaeon. We anticipate 2 titans to be there, Toa and Chemo. Toa and Chemo were known to be titans that could not absorb Kronos' power properly. This meant that they were lowly ranked among the titans in terms of divinity. Other than those 2, most of the forces at Myeongbu-jaeon were their subordinates. The rest belonged to Typhon. We'll attack Myeongbu-jaeon with the 11th and 12th divisions. Stealthily and very quickly. What will the 10th troop do? They'll move secretly in the rear while we hold up the 2 titans. Lamb only explained up to that point. She didn't say what the 10th division was aiming for. However, they're making a diversion. While the 3 troops are drawing the Titans' attention, the 10th division will rush to occupy the temple in the center. Yi and Wu was able to see through Lamb's scheme right away. Are they planning to light up the torch and awaken Hades' holy power? If so, that was an excellent plan. Of course, that'll only work if Toa and Chemo are pushovers. But one way or another, that plan was definitely worth trying out. The treaty was broken anyway, so we don't need to be helped to it. Still, we don't know when they'll start attacking again. It'll weaken our side if 30% of the troops are diverted here or not. As Yianwu organized his thoughts, he realized that the battle was not going to end here. Are they going to another holy territory after taking over this place? A blitzkrieg. The key was how many holy territories they could light up with the torch overnight. Pluto had already been pushed to its limits. They had found a way to counterattack in the meantime, and they might be able to turn the tides completely. Continuing to be isolated as they were now would only ensure their loss. Then, let's move. At Lam's command, the 13th Division began to move quickly. Myeongbu-jeon was one of the closest holy territories to the temple of the king of the underworld. Of course, even with that, Tartarus was huge, so it would take quite a long time to reach there. Furthermore, it would take more time to avoid the titans and giants' subordinates. Open hollow corner bracket Tartarus. I've always wanted to visit this place at least once. But this place is noisy. Like always. Jungwoo looked at the area through Yianwu's eyes and lightly clicked his tongue. This hidden stage was fascinating for him since he couldn't pass through all 10 gates. Yet he wasn't particularly impressed. All there was to see was the sky stained with red light and a dying earth. He felt like if he stayed for a long time in this sort of place, his mind would similarly be ruined. Open hollow corner bracket but, What? Open hollow corner bracket what are you going to do now? Jungwoo's voice was low. Open hollow corner bracket the wings are still incomplete. Though you don't have to show off your skills this early. No, I have to. Yianwu smirked. This way, they'll back down on their own. Or get hit. Open hollow corner bracket just what are you thinking? Jungwoo couldn't guess at how Yianwu would act. I think I'll do it like this. Yianwu grinned and stepped forward. As he lowered his stance, the soldiers who were waiting for the timing to storm Myeongbu-jeon looked towards him. I'll take the lead. Lam narrowed her eyes. Then, she twisted one side of her lips. You think you can do anything because you killed a god? Stop your bullshit and stand by. If you're waiting for the 10th troop, they've already arrived. What are you saying? It was when Lam was about to yell. Hyuk, Pung. Suddenly, blue firecrackers spread through the sky, signaling that the 10th troop had arrived at its target position. Once this signal showed up, the 11th, 12th, and 13th troops would start their attack. Then, when Lam detonated a golden firecracker, the 10th division would start to move. Lam looked at Yianwu in surprise. How had he known that the 10th division had arrived? She too had a keen sense that ordinary players couldn't compare to, but Yianwu's perception was preposterous. The 10th troop was too far away. Then, I'll go first. But Yianwu seemed to have no intention of clearing Lam's confusion as he kicked the ground and pushed forward. Wah! At the same time, shouts came from the north and the west. It was the sound of the 11th and 12th troops moving. Lam, who had spaced out, belatedly snapped to attention and raised her voice. Everyone, charge! The players began to run forward with a roar. Yianwu's party was mixed among them, as was Paneth's party, which was disconcerted from being unable to foresee Yianwu's movements. Kreutz pulled out the holy sword Zulfikar and summoned a turquoise, which symbolized victory, to load the party with huge buffs. Victoria engraved large letters in the air with shining hands. The rune broke into tiny pieces. As it washed away Tartarus's curse over living beings, the party found it easier to move about. Open hollow corner bracket thanks. Receiving the fantastic effects in succession, Galliard thanked Victoria and loaded his arrows. The bow he was using, Atraxia, was made by Heneva, with whom he had become great drinking buddies during their stay in Tartarus. However, the skill put into Atraxia could not be attributed to something made out of boredom. The bow was weaved from the hard-to-obtain branches of the world tree, meaning that its functions far exceeded that of others. It was enough to change Galliard's mind that a good tool spoiled a hunter's senses. More than anything, Galliard liked how the bow stuck to his hand. This was definitely the first time he had used it in action, but it didn't feel that way. The bow fit him so well that it felt like he had been using it for a long time. Though I never thought I'd receive this much help from a dwarf. Truthfully, elves and dwarves never got along. But with this type of support, species and race were irrelevant. He'd never put much stock into that sort of thing anyway. Pat, Galliard kicked the ground to jump, thinking that he should treat his drinking buddy to some nice alcohol later. Open angle bracket Shunpo fighting current close angle bracket. Galliard soared into the sky at once, creating a dust devil on the ground. Elven eyes could see accurately even when they were kilometers away from their target, and his were fixed firmly onto Myeongbu-jeon. Myeongbu-jeon was an old holy territory of Hades that was ruined beyond description. The ramparts were broken and the land was dead. They showed how much the enemies had ravaged the place. Beyond that, Galliard could see what looked like titans moving about busily. The titans' underlings were about to pour down on the holy territory. They finally noticed Pluto's presence. Shall I give it a go? Galliard smirked lightly at the thought of attempting to kill a god like Yenwu did. Brahm, he called the name of his close friend. As he did, Brahm, who had been below, took out a booklet from his chest pocket. He grumbled with a dissatisfied expression. Even if you don't tell me to, I was going to do it. Open angle bracket the Book of Jupiter close angle bracket. He had created it along with the Book of Mars after the Book of Mercury was broken. As expected, Heneva contributed to its making, like Atraxia. Waak. After he lightly uttered a spell, a magic circle appeared under Brahm's feet and a golden glow rose in the air. That moment, Galliard felt a great strength enter his body. Yes, this was it. With a satisfied smile, he pulled back the bowstring as far back as it would go, then released it. Open angle bracket whole body favor close angle bracket and open angle bracket black crow's feather close angle bracket. It was a combination attack created by the two friends who had been by each other's side for a long time. Each arrow had devastating power. Quang, 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 qua qua qua, and the arrows boasted as much destructive power as their confidence. Each time the arrow made contact, the degrading walls exploded. The Titan's subordinates that had been rushing out were buried below those walls. Those who just barely managed to escape being buried alive were still in danger. Galliard did not rest and continued to shoot arrows, and they had no opportunity to evade his shots. The surface of the ground turned upside down indiscriminately. The enemy troops were caught up in the explosions and thoroughly killed in the center. Open hollow corner bracket the dream is ending. Yenwu's subordinates also began to take action. First, Nemesis appeared and melted into the air, cursing their enemies and blessing their allies. A whirlwind blew about everywhere, tying up the feet of the Titan's forces. Those who were chaotically running out were further blocked, creating a bottleneck situation. Shannon and Hanryong aimed for that spot. Together with Rebecca, they swept away the enemies with a blade that was more elaborate and explosive than before. In the sky, the space ripped apart at an angle, revealing two open eyes. Open corner bracket die. Boo's magic was improving by the day as he regained Faust's memories. With some light words, magic circles punctured the air, one after the other, and magic rained down on the Titan's subordinates like a shower and wiped them out. Kiak, kak, kaak. Explosions and ripples rocked over the enemies continuously. The enemy forces were dying indiscriminately. Thus, the 11th, 12th, and 13th troops, who had been tirelessly running to Myeongbu-jeon, stopped on the way, staring blankly at the battlefield. Their enemies were collapsing at a rapid rate even without their help. Rather, they thought they would be a hindrance if they tried to participate. However, the disaster hadn't even begun yet. Domain declaration. A rather low voice from somewhere drew everyone's attention. Then, they opened their eyes wide. The world around Myeongbu-jeon was twisting around. As if they were surrounded by an invisible barrier, the Titan's subordinates ran helter-skelter, unable to move forward. Keeg. They screamed pathetically to try to break through, but above their heads, Yenwu was floating, with his left wing fully extended, radiating a black light. The wings, which were divided into 3 sections, were so large that their black flames seemed to touch the sky. And as the wings caused great amounts of damage, Yenwu awakened all 666 authorities hidden in the feathers. A deep silence settled in Yenwu's area. The Titan's subordinates, of which there had been so many, all died at once. Without a sound. Chapter 371 Sky Wings 9. The silence spread from the battlefield of dead Titan subordinates to the 4 corps in the Titans. Neither ally nor enemy could understand what they had just seen. What just happened? Did time stop? Is it a mass curse? Or a large-scale buff that makes enemies fall asleep? These were logical guesses. The monstrous Titan subordinates were the banes of Pluto's existence. Even if Hades and the generals could handle the Titans and giants, the subordinates would pour out endlessly, attacking even after their limbs had been severed or jumping around crazily even after they were decapitated. They were exceedingly violent, and so before every battle, Pluto members racked their brains thinking of ways to deal with them. And yet those horrible, implacable creatures had fallen like dominoes without even the slightest bit of resistance after one flap of a single wing. It was an unreal and monstrous show of power. It was easier to accept the fact that Yi and Wu had killed a god. At least his mind-blowing martial arts could be assessed, but this was something completely different. The Titans were thinking the same thing. What is that? The Titan Toei wondered if he was seeing things or if they'd fallen under some kind of mass hypnosis. He had no other explanation. It would have to be a mighty curse to affect a divine being like him, but that was more believable than that the subordinates had just died in an instant. He simply had no experience or knowledge that could explain what had happened. The attack of Hades' soldiers was within reason, and it was true that they had been careless. They'd made this mistake in the past, too. He could comprehend their outstanding firepower as well. Hades, generals and apostle had always been acknowledged by the Titans and giants for their skills. But how could he kill them all at once? How? A player had simply appeared in the sky in black clothes and a mask as dark as Tartarus, sky. After he spread one wing, the silence of death had overwhelmed the noisy battlefield. His connection with Simo had been cut off, and when he tried to reconnect, he couldn't see anything from the other side. The opposing force had shaken his divine level, and he felt so much pain that it was as though his soul were being ripped apart. However, he was so shocked that he couldn't even worry about it. What was worse was that things hadn't ended. Yeah, an ominous howl swept through his fallen subordinates and a hazy fog began to float over the corpses. The haze began to gather up in the forms of struggling humans in pain. It was souls, no, ghosts. It was the ghosts of the subordinates whose divine levels had plummeted. Yi and Wu had extracted hundreds of ghosts and was pulling them to him. The ghosts formed an ashy fog that whirled around Yi and Wu as he slowly absorbed them. At this point, Toei became speechless. This player not only killed them but also controlled their souls. That was the domain of a god or a superior divine being like the gods from the beginning of time or gods of concepts, but Yi and Wu only exuded the level of a player. Toei shivered as he looked at the colossal black wing. 666 individually mighty powers were bound together, spinning like a cogwheel. When he realized what it was, Toei gasped. Death was looking at him, ready to take his life. It approached quietly, waiting for its chance. The only reason it couldn't come closer was his soul power as a titan. Without it, his breath would be taken any moment. It was a hand of darkness that could bring death to an immortal being, and the 666 gazes beyond the wing froze him in place. He hadn't felt this imperiled in a long time. Toei found himself shaking, but he pushed away his fear. Hades, he managed to choke out. The power to give death to gods, only one being in Tartarus had that ability. Hades is here. The king of the underworld himself had come. That made sense. There was no way a mere mortal could frighten a divine being like him. Toei didn't know what Hades was planning, but he assumed Hades had chosen a player as a lure and was controlling him like a marionette. Hades probably wanted the player to become a war hero. Now that they'd been pushed into a corner, he was using any means possible to fight back. The ability to master the concept of death was impossible unless one was a being of Hades' level. After clearing his head, Toei felt livelier and more composed. He didn't notice that the 666 powers were bound together by another core, or that Yi and Wu's method of controlling death wasn't anything like Hades. He was blinded by his denial. Crunch. Toei ground his teeth. If Hades himself was present, they had no chance of victory. Retreat was the only option. However, as though he had read Toei's thoughts, Yi and Wu suddenly flapped his wing again and dashed towards Toei like a bullet. Boom. Toei's face twisted. It was true he was afraid of Hades, but he wasn't so powerless that a player could look down on him like this. Did he think he was Hades just because he had Hades' favor? Toei decided to kill that player even though he had to retreat. He had to discipline this impudent mortal to keep his honor as a god pristine. However, just as he was pulling out his holy artifact, Yi and Wu suddenly disappeared. Flash. The space in front of Toei opened, and Yi and Wu reappeared. What? Toei's eyes widened. Was it a simple teleportation skill? Or a flashing skill? But techniques that manipulated space were impossible to use without the permission of the owner of the space. Myeongbujian had been the Titan's territory for a long time, and Hades' holy power had been sealed. It was now Toei and Simo's holy territory, and only they had the authority to change the rules. Obviously, neither of them had given this player permission. Then how? Because this place is my territory right now. Yi and Wu read Toei's mind and offered his shocking reply with a smirk. It was only then that Toei realized the rules of Myeongbujin had been temporarily covered by something else. His senses had been muddled after his connection with his subordinates was severed, which was why he hadn't been able to notice it previously. Was it, dragon? It was the domain of the old transcendent species that should have gone extinct with the Summer Queen, Bina. No, these are demons, gods, there's too many. Toei wanted to shout, but before he could even speak, Yianwu already slashed his abdomen. Heaven bracket, flame wheel. Boom, URK. Toei vomited blood as he was blown back. The impact was so great that shockwaves vibrated in the air, flames twisting around them. Yianwu kicked off the ground to follow Toei, a crater forming under his feet. A deep trench opened below his steps when he began running. Pieces of the Rui Bang floated over Yianwu and assembled into a spear. Yianwu gripped the spear with his right hand and pulled out Vigrid with his left, combining the two. Click. Black flames blazed along the blade after the two joined. As soon as Yianwu caught up to Toei, he dug his feet into the ground and braced his lower body on the ground. Spinning with his arms out like a top, he began to gain speed. With the movements of the one-horned tribe called Thunder Feet and rotating energy, he shot out the spear. 8 extreme swords, Jet Sun, Breakthrough, Vortex. A whirlwind of flames rushed to Toei, who didn't have a single opportunity to block them. He'd only just managed to regain his balance when Yianwu spewed explosive black flames at him. The condensed holy fire as well as aura tore through the god's body, cutting, piercing, burning, and leaving terrible injuries that he couldn't protect himself against. However, his misery hadn't yet ended. Black Gubatera. As soon as the blade touched his skin, blood flowers began to bloom. Why does this guy have the Asura King's power? Blood flowers consumed magic power and wore out mental capacities. This power affected gods as well, which was how the demon gained the title of King of Kings, and continued to be infamous even after a long period of peace. Vigrid slashed through his left calf, and blood spurted out only to evaporate from the heat before it could even fall to the ground. However, what scared Toei the most was that death grew closer with each flap of the wing. The touch of the 666 powers had reached his neck and was tightening around it by the minute. The color of the touch that had taken his subordinates from him was growing clearer. He'd seen an illusion, but they really did exist. He couldn't breathe anymore, and he was feeling faint as horror spread from his heart to his mind. Various diseases afflicted him, then poisoning, and all kinds of deaths. The 666 different methods of death unraveled like string and wrapped around Toei's soul. As though they were competing to prove which of them was the best, the 666 powers dug in deeper. Even still, there was no conflict among the powers, and they supported each other, spinning like a wheel to complete the big picture of death. It was at that point that Toei recognized Hades' power. It was a more fundamental one of the processes of completing a concept, which was commonly called the domains of gods and demons. He didn't know how this human managed to have all these powers, but one thing was certain, he had fallen into death's trap, and he couldn't escape. The owners of the 666 powers who created the trap were enjoying themselves as if entertained by his death. Nergal bursts out laughing. Izanami smiles faintly. King of Seven Hells pats his armrest with a contented expression. Esma Diva laughs. Halfus laughs. Hell laughs. Crazy fools. He expected nothing less from his successors. There wasn't a single normal being among the gods or demons, just beings that smiled with satisfaction at seeing death. Was this why their domains were over death? KRRRK. With that final thought, Toei drowned in the trap. The invisible touch tightened around his soul for the last time, and Vigrid seemed like a scythe of death floating right above it. Slash. Toei's head shot up in the air, blood gushing out like a fountain. Cytogarba nods with satisfaction. Thanatos nods with satisfaction. Dispater nods with satisfaction. Chapter 372 Sky Wings 10. Toei's body split into small pieces, which were sucked into the Rui Bang. New letters appeared next to Astraeus's name, though. Simo's face crumpled at the sight. To URK. Simo didn't even get the chance to approach Toei, and he was driven back by an attack launched at his temples. Oh, dear, how can a god who's been on so many battlefields get distracted? From a distance, Galliard knocked an arrow with a laugh. He'd been blocking Simo from reaching Yianwu and Toei, but he couldn't help chuckling at the fact that Yianwu didn't need his help at all. However, he was having a great time mocking a divine being. When else would he have the chance to experience such entertainment? This was only possible with the help of Brahm, who had once been a divine being himself, but he was certain now that the distance between divine beings and mortals was shorter than it seemed. Of course, there's a vast difference between these small fries and famous gods. Galliard thought of Brahm's true form, which he'd seen with his fairy eyes when they'd met for the first time. Swoosh! He let go of his bowstring, and dozens of rays of light condensed together to become a single arrow of light that pierced through space. Boom! Simo tried to avoid it, but the tracking feature embedded in the arrow made it turn and follow him wherever he went. He was pushed back step by step. Suddenly, something crashed into him from behind, and he coughed out blood from the impact. When he turned his head to see what it was, he saw Lam with a stony expression on her face. Apostle. It was the last word Simo muttered before darkness burst from Lam's spear and swallowed him up. The holy artifact that Hades had bestowed upon her, Yin Eater, was famous for swallowing enemies into darkness, and its power could kill even a god. With that, the raid of Myeongbujin, their first battle, ended in success. The four corps who arrived looked at the scene in front of them with blank expressions. They couldn't even remember to cheer, unsure what to think of all the strange events that had occurred one after the other. Then, one of them regained his senses and finally cheered. Woo! The soldiers around him also snapped to reality and cheered in victory. They're really dead, right? Isn't it obvious? They're not even breathing. But how is this possible? There's no sign of any injuries. Pluto's soldiers poked and prodded at the Titan subordinates lying on the ground. They were looking through them to see if there were any survivors, but of course, they couldn't find a single one who was still breathing. Yi and Wu had done something that they didn't have the experience or knowledge to explain. Even if he used a power, what he'd accomplished was still unbelievable, just like the things that divine beings did. It had to be divine ability, not a power. However, since Yi and Wu was immortal, that didn't make sense either. It was inevitable that they would be confused. Even Lam was bewildered. She had lived far longer than most mortals could while serving Hades, but she had never seen anything like it before. Hades didn't take pleasure in revealing his abilities or divine strength, and his body had grown burdened with the loss of more holy territories. But a common player had exhibited this kind of strength. When he spread his wing, he was a different being. It was as though 666 gods and demons had descended. No, it was more like a fundamental concept appeared. She could still picture the shocking scene when she closed her eyes. Even now, she didn't know if the person standing above the altar in front of her was Yi and Wu or someone else. I'll light the fire now. Just then, Yi and Wu spoke up. Lam returned to reality and nodded. Lighting the torch was more important than satisfying her curiosity about Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu put a lit torch to the copper brazier. The flame looked like an ordinary one, but it was the sacred fire that had appeared when the universe was first created. The Cyclops brothers had managed to extract it from the soulstone. Whoosh! The tattered copper brazier tasted fire for the first time in a long while. The glow of the flames instantly repelled the darkness of the temple. Holy power swirled up and chased away the remaining traces of the Titans. In the process, the corpses of the Titan subordinates ignited into crackling flames. The light gathered on the roof of the Myeongbujin, and the entire holy territory grew brighter as though the sun had risen solely for it. They could now see the rundown conditions of the holy territory clearly, but for them, the sight still seemed holy and miraculous. The light grew bigger and bigger until a column of it shot into the sky. Lam could feel Hades' power inside of her awaken and grow. Hades was probably experiencing the same thing to a much greater extent. Just a few more. Lam clenched her fists. She could see an opportunity to turn the tide. If we can light just a few more torches. She tightened her grip on her spear. We will have the stairs to Olympus. That night, 3 columns of light shot into the sky of Tartarus. Before the Titans and Giants could even blink, they lost 3 of Hades' holy territories, Myeongbujin, Jikyeonjen, and Liwangjian. Thanks to Yi and Wu's contribution, Pluto was even able to reclaim more land than they'd originally planned. The columns of light from the lit braziers brightened Tartarus, and the 4 corps were able to return with confident footsteps to the temple of the king of the underworld for the first time. Yi and Wu's name never left the soldiers' mouths. Cain, Cain, they chanted it as they marched forward, feeling revitalized with each shout. However, Yi and Wu felt extremely uncomfortable with this. Open hollow corner bracket hung, you're a total idol. How about we make light sticks for your fandom while we're here? The pocket watch shook with mischievous laughter. Jung-woo knew Yi and Wu hated being singled out like this. Yi and Wu wanted to grab Jung-woo by the collar and punch him in the face, but instead, he glanced at the people passionately chanting his name and smiled ironically. He knew what they were so excited about. The only time I actually spread my wing was at Jikyeonjen though. Although it was only one wing, so many powers were bound to it that it took a lot out of Yi and Woo to spread it. He only opened it once, and for the rest of the time, he fought solely with his own strength. Since his demonic divine draconic body was destructive as well, he was still able to make a difference. I can't use it often. Yi and Woo rubbed the spot where his left wing was, muttering to himself. He could only use it for about 20 seconds at most. The skill was incomplete and still at its beginning stages. He could make it to 30 seconds if he improved it a bit, but he would need a full day or more for cooldown. The problem is whether I can even add another wing. The right wing with the category of war was still being prepared. The grouping was taking some time, but by the time he finished it, there wouldn't be much left to do. However, how efficient would the right wing be if the left wing alone already overloaded his body to this extent? The usage time will grow shorter and the cooldown time will grow longer. It was helpful in skipping an unnecessary battle and going straight to killing a god, but there were too many constraints on it. He needed to improve it a bit more. Is there anything I can do? Yi and Woo raised his head and saw the columns of light connecting Tartarus, land and sky. If more of those appear, the severed path to Olympus will open again, right? Yi and Woo remembered one of Jung Woo's experiences, the Fengshan ceremony during which an altar was built to connect the land and the sky and invite the god they served to the lower world. It was a kind of shortcut created after Alpharaon cut off access to the 77th floor and above from the rest of the tower. Alpharaon brought many changes to the ecosystem of the tower, and Fengshan was a method of connecting the heavenly and lower worlds. The devil army had been able to imitate the Elohim and succeeded in awakening the strength of the great sage's brothers, the 7 great demon lords. Thanks to that, the devil army's power in the tower was greatly boosted. Torches were the main tools in a ceremony that created a bridge that pulled Olympus closer and raised Tartarus towards Olympus at the same time. Like a lighthouse or perhaps a signal fire. The Titans and Giants had taken over Hades, holy territories, to cut off the connection with Olympus and isolate him. Now that the territories had been reclaimed, Olympus would probably prepare to descend into Tartarus to help. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing for me, though. An unrevealed god 1 glares at you. An unrevealed god 2 looks at your wing with shocked eyes. An unrevealed god 3 discusses your bracelet with another unrevealed god 4. Yi and Woo could feel the sharp gazes on him, and there were equally displeased gazes from one of the 4 core. Paneth's party didn't try to pick a fight with him after seeing his overwhelming might, but their eyes were filled with envy and rage. Yi and Woo knew they were waiting for their opportunity. He'd have to be a fool not to realize this from the intense glares of the Olympus gods. After his wing of death appeared, the eyes of the 4 Olympians had grown sharper, but it wasn't completely unexpected, considering how much Poseidon disapproved of him using the Black King's power. They probably think they have to stop me from spreading my wings. Paneth's group is probably frustrated by Poseidon's nagging. The more columns of light appeared, the shorter the distance between Olympus and Tartarus became. Poseidon's blessing for Paneth's party was probably becoming stronger as well. Then this is my chance. Yi and Woo believed Paneth's party would attack him during the next battle. In fact, he was surprised that Poseidon had waited so long with that temper of his. Furthermore, Paneth's party had lost many of their supporters thanks to this event, so they were understandably enraged. From Yi and Woo's perspective, it wasn't bad at all. He had been planning on getting rid of those nuisances anyway, but he'd hesitated because of the gazes on him. If he could use the chaos of battle to his advantage, it wouldn't be difficult at all. It was probably what they were thinking, as well. The next battle would be harder than any of the previous ones. Just as Yi and Woo concluded this, someone suddenly shouted, "Lamb, the Titan forces are coming closer. It seems they've sent a unit to chase after us." What? Lamb frowned, but this wasn't a surprise. The enemies had lost 3 of their posts in a single night, so they would use any means to get them back. Everyone, get into position. At her command, the 4 corps moved in perfect order, determination on their faces. They hadn't yet achieved much in battle, but today, they would show the might of Pluto, who were called the strongest military force in Olympus. Clack, clack, as they set up their shields and formed a phalanx, Paneth looked at the quest window that appeared in front of her. Sudden quest, assassination. Description: 4 of the Olympians, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, and Hera, feel a great threat from player ###, who is trying to inherit the Black King's power. After deciding that player has caused disorder in the tower, they wish to get rid of him. You are being given a blessing that equates to that of an apostle of Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, and Hera. Your aura will call storms like Poseidon, raise earthquakes like Demeter, burn the world like Hestia, and become as sharp as Hera's. This is the godly power that you and your tribe have desired for so long. With this power, eliminate player in the confusion of battle. All the blessings given will become entirely yours. Condition: assassination of player Time limit. Rewards: 1. Olympus's blessing and grace. 2. Granting of transcendence. Paneth clenched her fists. The gods had given her a quest instead of a simple command. The reward, granting of transcendence, stood out to her. The power to regain the divine level her ancestors had lost was right in front of her. She had to use every means to claim it. Meanwhile, at the same time, Yi and Wu received a quest as well that was in direct opposition to Paneth's. Sudden quest survival. Description: 4 unrevealed gods in Olympus are targeting you. Survive. Condition: survival. Time limit. Rewards: 1. Olympus's blessing and grace. 2. Granting of transcendence. Chapter 373 Sky Wings 11. Gods and demons were like laws of nature. Since they were a part of the system, they had the ability to give quests to anyone, and Yi and Wu knew who had given him this particular one. Athena. Athena looks at you with a depressed expression. After discovering the truth about Jung Woo, Athena had grown quiet and hovered around him with a melancholy gaze. Was it because she felt apologetic, or did she have something to say? He didn't know what she was thinking, but he was sure of one thing, that she cared about him and his brother. She had given him this quest because she knew Poseidon and the others were after him, and she wanted to warn him. The closer Olympus grew to Tartarus, the more pressure Poseidon and the others would create. However, this also meant Athena and Hermes were closer as well, and she wanted Yi and Wu to endure until then. Yi and Wu laughed. While Poseidon and the older generation were trying to stop him because they were concerned about his power, Athena and the younger generation were trying to protect him. It was an internal division within Olympus. He was more curious than ever about the Black King's identity. The more his curiosity grew, the fiercer his longing for the Black King's power became. If it was a power that even the great beings in Olympus feared, then all the more reason he had to have it. I have to take this power. Khan. Yi and Wu turned to his friend. A questioning expression appeared on Khan's face. Without another word, Yi and Wu shared the quest window with Khan. After reading the description, Khan stiffened and glowered at Paneth's party. Then, he turned back to Yi and Wu with an expressionless face. It was the same face that he'd shown while hunting the descendants of the Monkey King in order to save Doyle. Although he was amiable in normal circumstances, that relaxed demeanor dissolved in front of an enemy. What do I need to do? Khan nodded frequently as he listened to Yi and Wu's plan. Look out for that child. From far away, the Titan Iapeto's face wrinkled as he watched Pluto find the courage to get into formation to fight them. Although it was true that he had once been a leader of the Titans under Kronos' rule and he'd been sent here in disgrace, that wasn't the reason for his frown. He was remembering what Typhon had said to him before he left. Child. Yes, the one who killed a god. The player who killed Astraeus. Correct. The child who has received the favor of gods, demons, and dragons and possesses their potential. The one that appears like a despicable hybrid but possesses pure blood. Typhon had been smiling in amusement as he spoke about the mortal who'd killed not only Astraeus, but also Titans at the 3 holy territories. Are you saying I shouldn't kill him? Iapetos had narrowed his eyes, not understanding Typhon's intent. Although he followed Typhon because his power was lacking, he never forgot that he was once been a leader of Titans. This was why he disliked when others tried to give him orders, Typhon included. However, Typhon was too enigmatic and tyrannical to refuse. When did I say not to kill him? Then, I'm saying you should observe him. If he's useless, kill him, or if he's worthy, swallow him. If he's too much, run away. Run away. Iapetos felt wronged. Even though he was trapped in Tartarus with most of his former power gone, he was a superior being that couldn't be compared to lowly idiots like Astraeus or Toei. He was one of the original 12 Titans, after all. The 12 Olympians, such as Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Demeter, ruled Olympus now, but before them, he sat on the throne as one of the 12, along with Kronos. Unlike modern Olympus, which had become just one of the societies on the 98th floor, the Titans had been unrivaled in power in the heavenly world. As someone who remembered the glory days, he couldn't help becoming furious at Typhon's advice that he run away. It was an act of mockery. However, he couldn't express his displeasure since Typhon now held the upper hand. Typhon knew this too and had smirked at Iapetos for not being able to speak up, as if he thought that Iapetos weren't all that different from the gods that Iapetos thought were lowly idiots. Anyway, beware, we wanted the columns to be opened. Gaia's favor is with us. We're not meant to be in this dark Tartarus. Typhon had repeated the words he always said. Olympus is where we deserve to be, don't forget. The columns of light were symbols of humiliation for them, a reminder of their embarrassing history. They were chains that tied them to Tartarus. How much had they suffered to escape them? But now, they were becoming stairs to a new opportunity. If Olympus could descend to Tartarus, it meant Tartarus could ascend to Olympus as well. The titans and giants centered around Typhon weren't fighting just for the control of the vile Tartarus. Their mission was to climb to the 98th floor, where the gods and demons were busy taking sides and speaking about peace and ceasefires. They truly believed that it was possible to take over the tower. Unlike the beings who had been living in peace, they had suffered in squalor for thousands of years in Tartarus. Moreover, Kronos' death followed them like a blessing. Our brother, Kronos, please take care of us even in death. Iapetos murmured a small prayer to Kronos' body, which lay behind them like a mountain. It was a small ceremony the Titans always performed before going to battle, a sign of respect to their blood brother and the god of all gods. Just then, Iapetos raised his head, sensing something rushing his way. A black projectile was cutting through the red sky. Begone! It seemed like it would stop at nothing. Iapetos frowned. It was the same projectile that had taken Astraeus out in a single blow. He was displeased that he was being attacked in the same manner. With a scowl, he directed his power to his hand, and black energy filled his palm, Kronos' power which he had stockpiled in his body. He managed to regain a fraction of his old ability as he released the energy. Boom! Iapetos stretched his hand out to meet the black projectile head-on. His hand grew numb, and he frowned even more. The player was stronger than he thought. Was it because he had the weapon of the great sage, who was as impudent as those in Olympus? Iapetos gave up trying to completely break the projectile and summoned more of the giant god's power to flick the projectile away. The Ruyi Bang shot into the sky, parting clouds as it passed. The hole in the clouds revealed a dark and heavy-looking sky. Then, afflict, at those words, storm clouds suddenly gathered in the red sky. Boom! Hundreds of red-black fire lightning bolts struck, condensing into one. They fell without stopping, turning the dark world bright for a moment. The cold air grew so warm from the heat they exuded that it was difficult to breathe. Most lower-level divine beings would have perished by now. Iapetos scowled. With his divine eyes, he could see the different elements in the lightning bolts. Designated enemy, explosion diffusion, and curse contagion. All these powers, and the Asura king's power. You fools must be crazy. Iapetos roared after reading the countless powers within the fire lightning. He couldn't understand why so many powers had been given to a mere human, and he thought the 5,000 gods and demons who had agreed to it were crazy. He couldn't let the fire lightning continue raining down. They would create a huge explosion, and the individual bolts would join each other to devastate everything. On top of that, it was obvious what kind of horrors Vimalicitra's blood flowers would bring. Half of the subordinates he'd brought with him would be swept away. Each of them was an important source of strength to Iapetos, and he couldn't afford to lose a single one, especially since he was waiting to ascend to Olympus. He decided to release all the power that he had been holding in. The giant god's power awakened and expanded his body. A black giant god as large as a column of light appeared where Iapetos had been standing. The giant god grew dozens of kilometers and raised a hand to rip apart all the clouds, sending down lightning bolts. Rumble. The storm clouds tried to push Iapetos away, spewing out more bolts, but Iapetos stood firm and withstood the impact of the bolts. He tightened his hold on the storm clouds, which caused blood flowers to bloom on the surface of his skin. However, he didn't even blink. The fire lightning scattered with no place to go. The Ruyi Bang had already disappeared at some point as well. Open hollow corner bracket, where are you? Iapetos turned around, searching for the owner of the Ruyi Bang. He'd felt a clear presence earlier, but it had vanished. Where did it disappear to? Boom! Suddenly, Iapetos found himself crashing to his knees. Dust clouds drifted up into the sky. Open hollow corner bracket, what? Iapetos looked down at his ankles. Black, shadowy creatures were moving busily around his Achilles heel, which had been cut. Open corner bracket, what do you think? We're hunters, but I've never met a prey as large as you before. Shannon smiled icily at Iapetos. Compared to the Titan, he was just a small fly, but a blade infused with open-angle bracket volcano close-angle bracket caused enough damage. Open hollow corner bracket you dare. Iapetos reached out to crush Shannon. However, Shannon vanished, and Iapetos only managed to leave a handprint on the ground. At this moment, his neck started to feel warm. Boom! Hanryong had appeared and was swinging his sword around. Iapetos let out a loud cry that shook all of Tartarus. However, the attacks didn't stop there. Strong winds suddenly began to blow, and Rebecca whirled around, a pair of eyes opening in the sky to suffocate Iapetos with magic. Khan and Doyle distracted Iapetos below, Galliard shot his arrows with Brahm's help, and Kreutz and Victoria struck him. Follow Kane. Help Kane. We can kill Iapetos. It's our only chance to fell one of the main Titan gods. Pluto, who had at first been nervous at Iapetos' arrival, followed Yi and Wu's lead. They split into two groups, one to take care of Iapetos' subordinates, and the other to guard Yi and Wu's party. Open hollow corner bracket you dare. You dare. Iapetos screamed over and over, attempting to swat Pluto away. Many were injured, but they continued to march forward relentlessly. Yi and Wu's party aimed for the Titan's blind spots to exhaust him. At the point where everyone's face was glowing with hope, Yi and Wu appeared using blink and sent a burst of wave of fire to Iapetos' head, aiming for an acupoint full of imperfections, a key core of the giant god's power. If he pierced it, the Titan would collapse. Just as Vigrid was about to pierce Iapetos' acupoint, the Titan let out a large cry, releasing all of the giant god's power collected in his body. The energy whirled into a storm, heating the atmosphere, and spreading in all directions. It swept away everything in its path, including Yi and Wu and the soldiers of Pluto. At the same time, the waiting Elohim members began to move on Panath's orders, open hollow corner bracket go. It's time. Panath gritted her teeth as she looked at her party members, her eyes glinting viciously. Poseidon and the other gods were pressuring her heavily. Poseidon requests you quickly progress with the quest. Demeter gives a stronger blessing to you and your party. Hestia looks at you silently. Hera watches you in annoyance. When she'd seen the sudden quest window, she thought that her chance had finally come. She had mainly come to Tartarus to search for Yi and Wu on Poseidon's behalf and, on Demeter, Hestia, and Hera's orders, judge whether he was a threat to Olympus. At first, she had wondered why she'd been assigned such a mission. The gods promised to fulfill her tribe's old dreams, but she didn't understand why superior divine beings from a large society like Olympus were falling all over themselves to get rid of a single player. She believed she could kill the player in question on her own. After all, she was a direct descendant of two important families. She was confident that other than the 9 kings, no one would be able to defeat her. In fact, she believed she could match any of the 9 kings as long as she had the blessings of the 4 divine beings. But after fighting Yi and Wu on the battlefield multiple times, she realized she'd been mistaken. He's dangerous. How can a human use divine power? The power Yi and Wu used was something mortals couldn't possess. Even the divine beings of Olympus couldn't touch his power if he used it properly. At that moment, she understood why Poseidon had been watching Yi and Wu, biding his time for a chance to kill him. Olympus doesn't want to see him become stronger. He was a person who'd caused a commotion, storming through the floors and placing first in almost all the halls of fame from the 1st to the 34th floors. She couldn't even imagine how much more powerful he'd grow if he became a ranker, and she was filled with jealousy. It didn't make sense that a lowly human being with dirty blood could achieve something she couldn't. And what about the gazes of the transcendents that followed him around? She had spilled blood, sweat, and tears, just for the attention of the 4 Olympians, but that apathetic-looking human had gotten everything so easily. In fact, she had to admit to herself that Poseidon was interested in her because of Yi and Wu, not her own accomplishments. She hated it. A mere human was so arrogant just because of the power and attention he had lucked into. His power made a mockery of the path she had walked her whole life, and so Panath wanted to destroy it. She wanted to become the sword of Poseidon, who continued to urge her to kill him. I feel inferior. She had been an elite her entire life, and there was no reason she should feel that way. She needed to get rid of Yi and Wu quickly, and this was her only chance. Pluto's formation had been scattered from the heat wave that surged out of Iapetos. Iapetos' subordinates didn't fare any better. The entire battlefield was destroyed, but Iapetos continued to shoot out heat waves. No one in front of him could stand straight. Those who did were shredded by the dirt and rocks that flew through the air. Some were scorched, and others died when their respiratory system was burned and destroyed. The air itself shook, and those who couldn't stand the strong winds were blown away. It was as though the sky had fallen. The only people withstanding the strong winds were Paneth's party members. Poseidon's blessing, opposing storms, is added to your party. Demeter's blessing, epicenter resistance, is added to your party. The 4 Olympians were providing blessings to help them prevail. Although the blessings were limited to the duration of the quest, it was enough to strengthen Paneth's party. Paneth knew the 4 Olympians would have to face some consequences from the laws of causality, but that didn't matter to her. She had no reason to refuse when the gods were practically holding their hands. She also had a clear idea of their target's location. Yi and Wu had faced Iapeto's heat wave head-on, and he was likely on the brink of death now or at least critically injured. Their plan was to creep up on Yi and Wu and cut his limbs off, rendering him helpless enough for Paneth to slit his throat. They had been so sure the plan would go smoothly. However, Paneth couldn't contact any of her party members. What's going on? The plan rested on speed. They had to use the pandemonium to eliminate Yi and Wu and prevent their allies from witnessing their deed. However, none of her party members had emerged, and the dust clouds were so thick that she couldn't see anything. Her senses were being blocked by something, as well. An uneasy thought began to grow as Iapetos lifted his head with a roar. He was now 2/3 the size he had been when he'd first grown, but his aura was still the same. In fact, it had grown more intense and heated than before, as if he were finally unleashing his anger. As the earth flipped over and sandstorms obscured her view, Paneth's sensitive nose finally picked up the iron smell of blood. Blood. It had leaked into the air when Pluto had been swept away, but this time, something was different. It was faint, but she could smell divine blood that came from her party members. Poseidon erupts in wrath, asking what you're doing. Demeter frowns in dissatisfaction. Hestia abandons her expectations of you. Hera abandons her expectations of you. From the messages, Paneth realized that something was off. Just as she was about to investigate, a familiar face appeared through the sandstorm. Lady Paneth. It was Rosidus, her precious butler and right-hand man. He was bloody from head to toe, and he could only gasp, "Run away." She wanted to ask what happened, but before he could reply, something hit him and he exploded. When the pieces of flesh that had once been Rosidus fell to the ground, a man quietly padded over, sword pointing to the ground. Paneth frowned when she recognized him. "You. I wanted to get you rats with my own hands." Khan growled, revealing his sharp canines. Just like Rosidus, he was covered in blood, but Paneth realized that it was all from her party members. How? Paneth couldn't continue. Her eyelids trembled from shock. They had moved so discreetly, how did they get caught? Aside from that, the intense heat wave had swept over him, but he seemed unharmed. Paneth didn't know Khan could use Bian, and even had the highest proficiency in the tower, so she was greatly shocked. Khan kicked off from the ground as if didn't have any reason to answer her questions. His anger at her had already hit a breaking point since Paneth's party always picked fights and tried to stain his party members' honor. Now that they had set the stage, he had no reason to reject his role. Furthermore, the blood sword in his hand had grown as strong as it could be after absorbing all their blood. Blood sword rank. S proficiency. 75.1% description. As it absorbs enemies' blood, the speed and strength of its attacks increases with a ceiling of 350%. Using Bian tripled the strength of his attacks, and therefore, no one could stop Khan. He dashed forward with the blood sword, and Paneth retreated in surprise. With Poseidon's blessing, she released open angle bracket storm rain close angle bracket. Boom. Fuck, what is this place? Ether frowned, looking around. The party members had been moving to attack Yi and Wu, but he'd blacked out and then when he regained consciousness, he found himself somewhere strange. He was in a dark place that had neither wind nor heat. However, he could see his body as clearly as though a light were shining on it. Eventually, he decided to walk, thinking something would come his way if he did. If this was a unique curse meant for him, the one who cursed him would eventually act, and if it was just a random curse, it would be released soon. If it was an illusion, his divine blood would wash it away soon, so he didn't worry. Or else, someone might come to help or not. Shit, he cursed, feeling wronged. The more he thought about it, the more he felt sorry for himself. He didn't fit into the Elohim or the Devil army. He promised himself to live a great life unlike his foolish father, but all he'd gained was the stigma of a traitor and mocking fingers pointing at him. He was a pitiful and pathetic dog. Yes, that was right. No matter how many times he turned it over in his mind, he truly was little more than a dog. Perhaps he was even worse off. Owners didn't abandon a dog if it was loyal. Dogs also received love, but no one loved him. He had nowhere to lay his head on and no one to depend on. Ha ha ha, fuck, a thought suddenly occurred to him. If, just maybe, what if he hadn't turned his back on Arthea? What if he hadn't abandoned Jungwoo, would he be in a different place in life? I didn't want to be like this, either. Ether covered his face with his hands. No one was watching, but he didn't want to reveal his expression anyway. I didn't want to be like this, either. He wanted to be a hero. He wanted to receive cheers and acknowledgement. He wanted a comrade who had his back. That was all he ever wanted. It seemed so easy when he was in Arthea, but after he left that safety net, there was no one to catch him. People he thought would welcome him turned silent, and those he thought would acknowledge him laughed instead. It was so lonely. He'd once asked himself if he regretted leaving Arthea and thought the answer was no. However, he'd only been lying to himself. He regretted it. He regretted it so much. He longed for the old days when he could laugh without any worries, trust his comrades, accept people's praise and cheers. He longed for the days when he had been a hero. Jungwoo, I'm sorry. Truly, why did people only realize the value of something after it was gone? If he could go back in time, he would do it in a heartbeat. Tears dripped through his fingers. Just then, he heard a familiar voice. You haven't changed. Was he hallucinating? You only regret that you've lost the good things in the past. You want to find an easier path because you're having a hard time right now. You're pretending to reflect and regret. It wasn't a hallucination. Ether lifted his face from his hands and shouted with a frightened expression. Who is it? Yeah, that's all you were. I asked you to tell me who you are. It was Jungwoo's voice, so clear that it was as though he were alive. However, that was impossible. Also, just then, the darkness opened up in front of Ether, and someone walked out of the fissure, a man with black eyes and hair wearing a sacred-looking white armor and wings, as though he'd walked out of Ether's memories. Ether's eyes widened when he realized it wasn't an illusion. His eyelids trembled. I was stupid for thinking you were a real friend. However, there was one glaring difference from his memories. This friend had always smiled at him, but now he was looking at him with cold eyes and an expressionless face. So, I want to erase my foolish past, Ether, Jungwoo growled. Chapter 375 Sky Wings 13. When he had woken from his long dream, Jungwoo thought it was a relief that his suffering had helped his brother. But another thought came to him. If he were back in reality, won't they be here somewhere? Jungwoo grinned at the sight of Ether pale with fear. However, it wasn't a smile of happiness but disbelief. I thought I'd be angry when I saw him again. Jungwoo remembered the lives he'd endured. Each time he repeated the special benefit, he repeated the bad ending, as well. In the lives where he'd managed to survive past the middle, most of them had ended from his friend's betrayal. He had to repeat the pain of his heart being split each time. Although there were times when they didn't betray him, they were infrequent, and he was always betrayed for the same reasons: greed, desire, hunger for power. The same thing had occurred in reality. In hindsight, he had been one of the reasons Arthea had splintered. He'd turned a blind eye to his exhausted friends and encouraged them to keep climbing for the elixir. Many clans had grown wary of them, but he always ignored them. Then, things ended badly because of the frustrations, annoyances, and misunderstandings that kept stacking up. All the lives that had ended in betrayal were a result of his self-righteous behavior. It didn't excuse the betrayals, of course. Sadie had been concerned about her friends until the end. Kun Khr cried for his lover. Jean died trying to lift his weary spirits. Not everyone made the same decisions. However, Bahal, Leonte, Balak, Ether, and Vieira Dune always chose the same path in both reality and the other lives. They had laughed when they stabbed him in the heart. That was why Jungwoo couldn't understand them. He wanted to ask them why they did it. Why did they make the same decision in every situation? Why did they turn their backs on the laughter, conversations, tears, and joys of their friendship? Were they happier in the end? However, Yi and Wu had already killed Bahal and Leonte, Balak went off the grid after climbing to the higher floors, and Vieira Dune had become a strange god after swallowing Mother Earth, so he had no way to find an answer to his questions. But the heavens were helping him because Ether was still here. He could finally ask someone. Sky wings. White wings spread over Jungwoo's silver armor. It was his signature skill which earned him the nickname, Heaven Wing. Winds whipped out of him and wrapped around them both. Unlike Yi and Wu's Sky Wings, Jung Woo's Sky Wings had the extreme potential of dragon factors. Draconic blood heightened his senses to their peak, and pressure pushed down his surroundings. The dragon breath that came spewing out marked his territory. Whenever he spread his wings, no one could compare to him. Boom! Jung Woo kicked off from the ground, creating an impact so powerful that the darkness shook. He split through the air and reached Ether at a speed that broke the sound barrier. Ether collected himself belatedly. He was flustered that a dead person had come back, but the most important thing was to protect himself. Open angle bracket white light close angle bracket. Clapping his hands together, he turned them over and raised them over his head. A thick curtain of light blocked Jung Woo's approach, or at least, tried to. Boom! The light should have been as sturdy as a barrier, but the Sky Wings force shattered them like glass. Under the shards of light, Jung Woo turned to the right, holding a gigantic sword in his hands that shone as brightly as his armor, Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer. Category: Double Hand Longsword. Rank: A+, Original, X. Description: a sword the master blacksmith Heneva made from bones provided by Kalitas. As it is created from dragon bone, it has outstanding durability and magic power conductivity. Beads of orichalcum are studded throughout the sword, amplifying its effects. It's currently stronger than normal because magic conductivity cores have been added. Asterisk Dragon Catcher. If fighting with an opponent who holds even the slightest trace of the draconic species, the holder of the sword will be able to dominate them. Dragon's Gaze. A high probability of taking health and magic power from an injured opponent. The opponent will be trapped in fear as if they are exposed to a dragon's gaze. The immunity and durability of the opponent will be nullified. Dragon Formula. Magical formulas can be engraved along the blade. The magic will never disappear because it is converted into the dragon language, and only a small amount of magic power is needed for activation. Not only was Dragon Slayer a great weapon, it was also an incredible magic tool. Its durability guaranteed it wouldn't break no matter what type of weapon clashed with it, and the magic engraved on the blade only used a minute amount of magic power, which meant it was more effective than reciting a spell. The dragon language was one of the most superior types of magic. A few words could change the laws of nature. The draconic species made it possible because they were blessed by mana, and this was what allowed them to be equal to gods and demons at one point. On top of that, magic conductivity cores had been added, so it had an immense potential for destruction. The Dragon Slayer Jung Woo had was only a replica, but Jung Woo remembered all the minor details and functions of the Dragon Slayer, and he'd contributed his knowledge to the creation of the replica. As a result, it was only a few ranks below the original, and its capabilities were outstanding. It was the sword that suited Jung Woo the best, and it was better than most holy artifacts. It wasn't just the Dragon Slayer. The items he wore, Heaven Crupper, Ogre Power Gauntlet OPG, Feather Cloud Shoes, and so on, were items he'd worn when he'd been Heaven Wing. Jung Woo expressed his gratitude once more to the person who'd helped him recover his things. Thanks, Nemesis. Open hollow corner bracket It's nothing, Ex-Master, I've been waiting for this moment as long as you have. Dreaming Illusion. Nemesis skill, Dreaming Illusion, trapped people at the border between an empty dream and a nightmare so that Nemesis could weigh them down with emptiness and make them panic. But when it was activated for just one person, it would trap them on the other side of space, where they would be killed. It was a tactic Jung Woo had used frequently with Myrn, Nemesis' previous identity. When Nemesis properties changed, the environment changed to the brink of dreams. However, Jung Woo liked it better there because anything was possible if you imagined it properly. Even with a half-broken soul, he could regain his old appearance for a while. Let go of it, all of it. This was a stage that Yi and Woo had made especially for him. Boom. URK. Ether couldn't withstand the attack and was blown back. Jung Woo flapped his wings again to follow him, swinging Dragon Slayer. Open angle bracket / close angle bracket. It was a skill Jung Woo used frequently against his enemies. It was ordinarily an ordinary skill, but in Jung Woo's hands, they shot lightning bolts with a thunderous noise, yellow sparks flickering over the blade. Open angle bracket Wave of Light close angle bracket. Rumble. When Jung Woo first created Wave of Light, he could barely control its destructiveness. His friends always ran whenever they saw the skill, and they teased him by calling it a suicide skill. However, as Jung Woo's ranking went up, his control grew until it became an overpowered skill that destroyed everything. Impossible. Ether screamed as he saw the wave of light and slash rushing to him. He was stunned to see the techniques he'd thought were gone forever. He gritted his teeth and brought his hands down. Open angle bracket white light close angle bracket. Light poured out from the tips of his fingers. Slash broke as it crashed into the shards of light. The world of darkness grew brighter and hotter. Jung-woo laughed in incredulity. White light, you used to say you'd reclaim it from your sister, I guess you managed to get that done. White light was a power that had been lost when Ether's father was kicked out from the tribe after committing a sin. Ether had always hated his sister, Hemera, for taking it and vowed to retake it one day. However, he'd only ever told Jung-woo this, since they were close friends at the time. No one else knew about it, and Ether's face turned even whiter as his features twisted. This is an illusion, an illusion. It was impossible for a dead person to come back, and this was the only explanation he could think of since his mind had weakened from the stress he'd been enduring recently. Jung-woo was even more incredulous to see Ether's denial. Think whatever you want. Boom. When the second slash cut through Ether's white light, it ripped towards his upper body. Like always. URK. Ether couldn't move back in time. Lightning was already shooting through his body, and parts of his flesh were exploding. He was going to die, and many thoughts ran through his head. He bit his lips and decided he needed to get out of the dark world first. However, Jung-woo smirked at him as he planted Dragon Slayer in the ground. You're the same as ever, running away if things get a little dangerous. Why haven't you changed at all? Letters from the dragon language floated up as magic squares grew like fruits on a tree. Random fire. It was a skill that used Jung-woo's perfect adaptability trait and dragon's knowledge to release all the magic he'd memorized, all at the same time. Jung-woo had saved up an abundant amount of magic in the Dragon Slayer, and when he released it, a magic power storm swooped down. Rumble. Ether had nowhere to run. The brink of a dream was no different from a prison, and anyone inside would be swept away by the magic power storm. When he reappeared, his entire body was filled with all manners of injuries. Even his lungs had been scorched, and he breathed out smoke, gasping as though he would die at any moment. Jung-woo quietly approached Ether, who was still trying to run away, and stuck Dragon Slayer into his abdomen. Ether flapped around like a butterfly that had been pinned down. Jung-woo. Ether looked at Jung-woo through blurred eyes. He had lost most of his vision, but he could still see enough to know that the person in front of him was real. He didn't know how his dead friend managed to return, but there were more important matters at hand. Save me. Ether gripped Jung-woo's pants with powerless hands, looking up with pleading eyes. He believed that if he kept on begging, Jung-woo would let him go because that was the kind of friend Jung-woo was, kind and affectionate. Ether had spent a lot of time reflecting on it. We are friends, so please. It would be different this time. Now that his friend was back, he wouldn't make the same mistake he'd done in the past. Of course, he knew it wouldn't be easy. He had hurt Jung-woo beyond repair. But if he showed him how sincere he was, even if it took years, then Jung-woo would open up to him again. Jung-woo pulled out Dragon Slayer and cut through Ether's neck. Ether's head rolled on the floor, his mouth still begging. What a load of bullshit. He'd wanted to ask why he did it, but now Jung-woo realized that he didn't need to listen to any excuses. His ears would only rot from them. Jung-woo stepped on Ether's head with an annoyed expression. Chapter 376 Gigantomachia 1. Crunch. After crushing Ether's head into pieces, blood and flesh stuck to the bottom of Jung-woo's shoe, but he didn't even flinch. His cold eyes were still the same. Ha! He looked up at the nothingness, his sigh full of difficult emotions that spun around inside him. He'd thought he would feel better after taking revenge. He did, but it was tempered by the complexity of his feelings. Perhaps he felt numb. Jung-woo couldn't figure out what he was feeling. He didn't think that the kind of revenge you saw in movies was pointless, but he wasn't an extremely forgiving person either. He didn't know why the feelings he'd been expecting hadn't appeared. It was as though he'd just completed the first task of a series. The end was probably there, beyond the nothingness, the sky, and the world. Vieira, it would be nice if you could see this. Jung-woo called the name of his old lover, whom he planned to meet one day. Did she know he had awakened? Perhaps she wasn't even looking in his direction, too blinded by her passion to get to the higher floors like in the past. He stood like that for a long time. However, regardless of how long he waited, no responses or messages appeared. Jung-woo laughed at himself. He felt like someone who'd posted on social media hoping that an old lover would see how well he was living without her, even though his old lover wasn't interested in him at all. Then, I have to go up, he promised himself. If she wouldn't look at him, he'd make her see. And after that, Jung-woo made himself stop. He'd just be more pathetic the more he thought about it. He turned around to leave. Infected Mother Earth stares at you. Jung Woo's eyes widened as he whipped his head around. It was only a moment, but a gaze had turned to him. It disappeared quickly, but his senses had caught it. With a smirk, Jung Woo began to walk. Waking up hadn't been all in vain. However, at that moment, his body grew translucent, revealing the letters inside him. Jung Woo only covered it with his arm as though it wasn't a big deal. His eyes grew heavy. What happened? Lam woke up with a frown. There was a ringing in her ears, and she couldn't think properly. Then, she began to remember bit by bit, Yin Woo's subordinates and his party members charging forward, Pluto jumping into the fray, Iapetos releasing his divine level when he was cornered, a heat wave intense enough to cut apart mountains, the soldiers being swept away, broken formation, screams of burning soldiers. Lam's head shot up as she remembered the last image. She recalled fainting after trying to save the soldiers in the hell of fire. Please be alive, Lam repeatedly muttered to herself as she looked around. The air was hazy from the heat, and she couldn't see properly. Only after forcing magic power onto her eyes could she finally see around her. Ah! The sight was devastating. Black lumps lay around, presumably the remains of her soldiers, and the only survivors were the higher-level officials who had a bit of divine level. Clang! They were fighting a difficult battle against Iapetos' subordinates. It was even more difficult to find survivors from the 13th Corps. Lam clenched her teeth. Why hadn't she thought of it? Releasing the divine level, or the giant god's power, was a weapon that the Titans saved for the very end. The giant god's power was the energy that Kronos had left behind, and Titans could regain a significant amount of their lost divine level after absorbing it. It was how they'd managed to bulldoze their way to Hades. Since the giant god's power was the Titans' life and strength, it couldn't be replenished once it was used up, and so Titans were very careful about deploying it. However, Iapetos had released his divine level and used up most of his power. He didn't even just stop at one time but unleashed it multiple times. It didn't matter how good Pluto's formation was, the divine level would destroy them all. Lam used her spear to support herself up. She had to clean up before even more damage occurred. What happened to Iapetos? Just then, she heard Iapetos roaring. Open hollow corner bracket die. I'll kill you, human. He was now about 100 meters in height instead of kilometers, and his aura had diminished according to how much he'd shrunk. However, he was still big. Yin Woo gasped for breath above his head. Hoo. Hadn't he been swept away by the storm with her? Lam's eyes widened in shock when she saw Yin Woo. However, Yin Woo's attention was fixed on Iapetos below. That almost got me. He hadn't expected the sudden release of power either. Yin Woo's plan was to pretend to be injured by Iapetos and wait for Paneth's party to make their move. He had already discussed it with Khan, certain that Khan could defend himself since he could use Bane freely. He'd also provided a stage for Jung Woo in order to keep his promise to let Jung Woo kill Ether with his own hands. Fortunately, Nemesis' skills were excellent, so it was easy to set up. If Paneth's party fell into the trap, many of them would die. Even if some were lucky enough to survive, their future was grim since Tartarus was the front line that protected Olympus from the Titans and Giants. They were dabbling in betrayal, and on Poseidon's orders at that. It might have been alright if they'd managed to get rid of him, but with Yin Woo still alive, Poseidon and the others would have to tiptoe around Hades. Of course, Poseidon and the goddesses would deny their involvement and abandon Paneth's party. What came next was obvious. Hades wouldn't let them be, and even if they somehow managed to escape, only hunger and thirst awaited them in the treacherous Tartarus. Yin Woo didn't care if they were put on death row or starved to death. He only needed Paneth, who had directly received the blessings of the gods. However, his own carelessness had placed Yin Woo into danger. Thank you, Nike. Open hollow corner bracket. It's a relief you're safe. Don't take too many risks. Flames rose slightly, and Nike appeared to look at Yin Woo with worried eyes before disappearing again. Time difference. Yin Woo sped up his thoughts and analyzed how he could deal with Iapetos. Kronos' power is too dangerous. I don't know if I'll be unscathed if the same thing occurs again. The damage to Pluto was more serious than he thought. Another heat wave would end things. There was only one option left. It's a bit too soon. Yin Woo's eyes widened under his mask. But I have to use the other wing. The slowed down time returned to normal. Open hollow corner bracket. I'll kill you, human. Iapetos growled, stretching his hand up after realizing Yin Woo was cheekily standing on his head. Yin Woo jumped high in the sky before Iapetos' hand could reach him. I want to ask if that's the only thing you can say, but before that, I should thank you. Open hollow corner bracket. What nonsense are you spouting? Iapetos heard Yanwu's mosquito-like voice and focused all his senses towards him. Now that he could no longer restore his power as one of the 12 titans, he was thinking that he would only feel better if he ripped Yanwu apart. Even though he'd lost his divine level, he was still a god. A whirlwind spun around at his command, ready to burn Yanwu alive. However, Yanwu was calm even in the face of the oncoming storm. The more intense his enemy's aura was, the better it was for him since he could complete the right wing faster. Sky Wings Right is being composed. Keyword: War. Searching for powers that fit the keyword. The search is unsuccessful. The search is unsuccessful. The owners of the powers refused to have their powers searched. The Wing of Death had been relatively easier to make because it was centered on the Black King's power, which meant all the subordinates of the Black King were willing to cooperate. However, the need to balance the right wing with the Wing of Death created a lot of problems. First, there were no candidates for the core of the wing. Unlike the gods and demons of death who had a clear hierarchy, the other gods and demons were busy fighting over who was better. There were also complex relationships between them. He considered using the Ruyi Bang pieces as an element, but he quickly rejected the idea since the Monkey King had too many enemies. As he'd struggled to come up with ideas, he decided to change his perspective. Did the frame for the concept of the wing have to be a complete one? Would it be acceptable to everyone if it lacked conditions? Wouldn't that be fine? Yanwu was planning to make himself the core of the right wing. His entire life had been a battle. He'd fought with poverty in his youth, fought his mother's illness during his teens, and had fought in Africa as a young man. And now, he was fighting with the tower, climbing floor by floor. The keyword has been changed. Each fight had been difficult, and many had ended in failure. However, Yanwu had never tried to run away, and he always gained something from the experience, no matter how small. It was the same thing for the gods and demons who gave Yanwu powers. Most of them were transcendents from birth, but to become true gods and demons, they had to create their own level, which was filled with difficult tasks. They had to fight against fate and their own selves. New keyword: fight. This was why Yanwu wanted to use his accomplishments to create the right wing. He did things that no one else had achieved in the tower, things that the 5,000 gods and demons would be greedy for. Also, Yanwu was confident he would add more feats to his list in the future. That was also a fight. All he had to do was simply continue down the path he had been walking on his whole life. Yanwu was telling the gods and demons that if they lent him their strength, they should go all in. He would gather them and create a complete item. The right wing was the unification of all his accomplishments. It was the basis for a legend, which he needed to become a god. As soon as he balanced the two wings, he'd gain the divine level he sought. In other words, he wanted the domain of fighting. Flash. The scapulae along Yanwu's back began to glow faintly. The Wing of Death was entirely black, but this wing was flaming red. His current opponent was Iapetos, whom he wouldn't encounter under normal circumstances, so the keyword had activated in response. Powers that fit the newly changed keyword are being searched for. Searching for powers. Searching for powers. This time, there was no message saying that the search was incomplete. The gods and demons were contemplating deeply after he changed the keyword. If they gave their powers, the provisional contract would be broken, and their powers would likely become cogwheels of the right wing, like those of the gods and demons who'd lost their powers to the left wing. Just when Yanwu thought no one would step up, a message appeared. The first search has been successful. The power, goddess, stigmata, that Athena from the godly society open angle bracket Olympus close angle bracket has bestowed upon you has become the first component. A message from Athena has arrived. Message: it's a misunderstanding. A message from Athena has arrived. Message: it has nothing to do with him. It may have been like that at the beginning, but you're the one I'm supporting now. I will always protect you. Soon, more messages began to pop up one after the other. The power, heaven and earth transportation, that Hermes has bestowed upon you has become the second component. The power, faceless lawbook, that Hunden has bestowed upon you has become the third component. A message from Agaris has arrived. Message: shit, just when I went to the bathroom. A message from Agaris has arrived. Message: me, too. Me, too. The power, wicked devil, that Agaris has bestowed upon you has become the sixth component. Chapter 377 Gigantomachia 2. Vimalacitra smiles with pleasure. He is deeply interested in the decision you made. Vimalasitra hopes that his power will be utilized better. The power, Blat Gubatera, that Vimalasitra has bestowed upon you has become the 34th component. That was the last message. 34 powers had agreed to become cogwheels for the right wing under the keyword. It was a tiny number compared to the 5,000 powers, but they were significant. Athena, Hermes, and Hundon, beings who had favored Yi and Wu since the beginning, were superior divine beings who occupied important positions in their societies. The weight of their powers simply couldn't be underestimated. The combined powers of mid-level or low-level beings couldn't even compare to a single one of theirs. Vimalasitra, who had willingly given his most important power, was immense enough to do the role of hundreds of thousands. The right wing now had weight, and the powers began to work together like one piece of machinery. At first, the powers were so different that it was hard for them to flow together, but once the purple energy from Superbia adjusted the differences, the cogwheels began to turn with maximum speed. Since Yi and Wu was in a perilous situation, it was the moment for the fight keyword to prove itself. Yi and Wu could feel the extraordinary amount of holy power and demonic energy flowing into his body. The divine and demonic factors greeted each other in a welcoming manner. Crunch. On the other hand, the draconic factors attempted another transformation in order to keep the balance. The potential of his demonic divine draconic body grew once again. Time difference. Yi and Wu sped up his thinking once more to make a quick judgment. He had only 30 seconds to maintain this explosive strength, and he had to ensure that things were ended by then. No, it's too difficult using only the right wing. Yi and Wu pulled out the left wing as well. Unlike the quivering right wing, the blazing wing of death soared up to the sky. The two wings spread open, and the window to use them shrank. He now had only 11 seconds. Yi and Wu quickly opened subspace to pull out Vigrid. 10 seconds. He released Blink, which rushed to Iapeto's right shoulder. 9 seconds. The heat that had gathered to catch Yi and Wu instantly changed direction. Sharp winds blew down on Yi and Wu's head. The wing of death flapped, scattering them. Boom. There was a series of explosions as Yi and Wu gripped Vigrid and stabbed Iapeto's shoulder. 8 seconds. The energy from spreading both wings rushed into Vigrid. Nike. Open hollow corner bracket OK. Just leave it to me. Nike transformed into holy fire at Yi and Wu's urgent call and entered the sword. There, he conducted the energy and flared up. Whoosh. The fire grew to an uncontrollable size and swallowed Iapeto's. Iapeto screamed in pain. 7 seconds. He thrashed around in an attempt to rid himself of Yi and Wu, but Yi and Wu didn't budge. Vigrid dug in even deeper and the fire burned even more brightly. This was all due to a trait of Vigrid that he'd gained some time ago. Before catching Astraeus, Yi and Wu had received a message explaining that he'd completed part of Vigrid's hidden conditions. It carried a clue that would help him uncover its hidden name. Hidden quest, a concealed name. Description. After the Great Holy Sword was created during the Silver Age, it passed through the hands of many heroes and gained and lost many names. Then, after it was cursed and changed into a demonic sword, it lost all of its glorious names and was abandoned in an empty cave for hundreds of years to wait for a new owner. It met you and began to regain its function as a holy sword. It is close to its former glory, and after being washed clean by holy power and dragon blood, the curse is disappearing. However, its lost names have been buried in myths and legends, and there is no way to find them again. The name, Vigrid, is a fake name, but Vigrid never thought of looking for its old names until its spirituality was awakened after transcendence. It would like to search for its old name again. Names are important to the characteristics of an item. Only after recovering its old name will Vigrid fully regain its glory. From now on, every time an achievement is made, a clue will be provided. Use these clues to look for the old names. When a name is found, Vigrid will develop a new trait and magical appearance. Conditions. Vigrid's owner must possess transcendence. Time limit. Achievement conditions. 1. Additional accomplishment, right pointing arrow clue provided. 2. Clue solved, right pointing arrow true name discovered. 3. True name opened, right pointing arrow trait released. Currently available clues. 2. 1. All the heroes who held this sword were mighty. Their names are legendary. 2. One owner cut a giant's arm off and took possession of the sword. The curse of the giant has remained in the sword, and the owners of the sword since then haven't been able to avoid it. He had been given 2 clues, although they sounded just like a typical heroic tale, and he found it difficult to make a guess. However, since he'd already used Vigrid for a long time, Yi and Wu could guess the determination of the spirituality in the sword, and even without that, he could guess the characteristics. He already had a few names in mind, and with the clue provided by the quest, he was sure he was right. One of Vigrid's many names had to be of the sword that Hector, the hero of the epic poem The Iliad, had stolen from the giant Jutmundus. Durandal. Despite being inferior in power and receiving a prediction that he would lose, the hero fought again and again to protect his motherland before dying from Jutmundus's curse. Durandal was as bright as the victories of the great hero. 6 seconds. Most items that gained transcendence exhibited strength based on their accomplishments. These accomplishments were legends, and Durandal's legend was that it had been used to kill a giant. It meant that it had an outstanding nature for dealing with giants. The being that Yi and Wu was fighting was a god that was as large as a giant, which meant that Vigrid had an advantage. Vigrid has gained a true name, Durandal. The true name of Durandal has been released. Folklore. Giant killing. The amount of transcendence Yi and Wu had gained was far too small and he was unable to release Durandal's complete true name, but with the holy fire, it was strong enough. Iapetos screamed as the flames wrapped around his body. His dark body turned red from heat, blistering and forming cracks all over the skin. Flames dripped down like lava among the cracks. Iapetos attempted to release his divine level once more. He would no longer be able to become a great god again, but his situation was too precarious. However, his body didn't listen to him for some reason, as though it had been bound tightly by something. Iapetos realized what it was and scowled at the eyes glaring at him in the skies. Open hollow corner bracket Athena. You bitch you. Had she paid a price for the laws of causality? If so, what had she exchanged for the ability to stop a divine being? Even if the columns of lights made the exchanges between Olympus and Tartarus become smoother, she'd have needed a significant sacrifice. It didn't stop there. Beings as tiny as flies to him appeared through an open space. Boo's eyes attacked him, while Shannon, Hanryong, and Rebecca appeared once more and whipped around him. There were also other creatures he'd never seen before. A dark shadow loomed over the ground and tentacles sprang up to wrap around Iapetos. Spirit Gwai. An evolved form of Gwai. They stay hidden in the shadows of the spiritual world and only appear when needed. They were Yi and Wu's shadow, and they moved entirely according to his will. 5 seconds. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. The clock continued to tick as Iapetos' giant body collapsed. 2 seconds. 1 second. When Yi and Wu reached his limit, his wings released, and he fell to the ground, his entire body exhausted. Was it because he'd forcefully used 2 incomplete wings? Whatever it was, the demonic divine draconic body finally hit a wall. Vigrid lost Durandal's form and returned to its usual appearance. However, as he fell, a faint smile appeared on Yi and Wu's face. He felt a lot of pride in discovering how far his strength went before hitting its limits. He was now strong enough to go toe-to-toe and even defeat divine beings. Open hollow corner bracket I'll kill you. Kill. Iapetos glowered at Yi and Wu now that he'd been released from pain. Flames still ate away at his body, and pieces of his flesh rained down as black energy poured out from the cracks, like water leaking out of a broken pot. Kronos, power was leaving his body, and that was the reason Iapetos couldn't make a move even though he greatly desired to kill Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket no. He struggled to hold on to Kronos' power, but it escaped through his fingers. The giant god's power swirled around and rushed to Yi and Wu, entering the manacle and fetter. The cast of the Black King cried with pleasure after eating Kronos' power. All of this occurred before Yi and Wu could even blink. Open hollow corner bracket arg. Iapetos exploded with rage. He had not only failed to defeat Yi and Wu, he also lost his power. His body was already shrinking and returning to normal. His eyes were fixed on Yi and Wu, who barely managed to land safely. I'll kill you even if it means death. Iapetos slowly approached Yi and Wu, too weak to even finish his sentence. Still, a titan was a titan. He had the strength to kill a player who had exhausted himself. Rescue Kane. Protect Kane. Lamb and the remaining Dis Pluto members rushed towards Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket enough. Suddenly, the sky divided as a colossal pair of eyes filled with amusement appeared. It was Typhon.